Ladies and gentlemen, as we are about to begin, kindly mute your mic to avoid interruption, and please ensure that your display name in Zoom is the same as the name written on your article for verification purpose. Thank you for your kind cooperation and attention.
Eminent, credible, sustainable. A global revolution in a truly competitive millennium. Dedication and commitment are the essence in facing challenges and fulfill hopes. Intellectuals play the most significant role in the creation of frameworks for future sustainable development. This is the pledge of Universiti Utara Malaysia. Management is the embodiment of Universiti Utara Malaysia UUM. Management that is based on thought and intellectual, where art, science and craft meet. At UUM, the holistic educational ecosystems is not merely to produce alumni, but to lay the foundation for future leaders.
Since its inception, UUM strives to produce graduates who are not only knowledgeable, but also thoughtful and devoted to their families and all stakeholders. With a high level of integrity, we hope that the contributions of UUM graduates to the religion, people, country, and also at the international level will bring positive impact now and also in the future.
Emphasis is given to the advancement of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, IR 4.0. The world sees UUM as an institution of higher learning, equipped with a state-of-the-art facilities, smart campus enfolded by nature. UUM champions the voice of its students. It is the voice of future intellects.
So as a student graduating, especially from Universiti Utara Malaysia, which is actually the management university, we need to make sure that they are actually equipped with all this proficiency.
If you look at the world now, people are talking about sustainability, go green. So UM is in the right place, greeneries, and the environment is certainly very conducive to get the students to learn and to absorb knowledge.
The educational reform has placed UUM as a credible institution regionally and internationally. Humanizing education becomes our focal point, thus giving a universal value to knowledge, virtue and service. Research and innovation by its academic fraternity are undertaken with seriousness, not merely to fulfill the academic requirements, but to be at the forefront in shaping the industry. More than 100 million ringgit worth of research grants invested, and more than 7,000 academic publications in the field of management and business produced in the last 5 years. Facilities and amenities provided feature the latest in smart technology, complementing the tranquility of the lush green campus surroundings. First-class infrastructures within the exquisiteness and splendor of nature showcase the education ecosystems at its best.
The facilities, the environment, actually creating individual or students who have holistic skills from the perspective of academic, professional, as well as the social skill.
We believe in developing students holistically that can serve the society and country as its future leaders with the highest integrity and professionalism.
I'm actually happy to see how exactly Universiti Utara Malaysia have evolved itself to become a highly ranked university.
Universiti Utara Malaysia, over the past 3 decades, has earned its own place by providing the highest quality of education and is marching forward towards achieving greater success and greatness. With the various awards and accreditations received, The future is certain and bodes well for the university. The royal patronage with the Kedah Royal House indeed provides vital publicity for the important work done at the university and allows the enormous achievements and contributions to society be recognized.
UUM is a unique environment where the emphasis of the university is not just purely on academics. In this case, academics, sporting excellence, spiritual excellence, and by then, I guess we could live up to our motto of Ilmu Budi Bhakti.
I love UUM, and I'm proud to say that I graduated from UUM.
UUM is the jewel valley of the North Malaysia.
Ilmu Budi Bhakti. We love UUM.
Universiti Utara Malaysia, the eminent management university.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning. Yang berusaha Associate Professor Technologist Dr. Muhammad Shahbani Abu Bakar, Director University Teaching and Learning Centre UTLC Universiti Utara Malaysia, come Chairman of the 5th Inspirational Scholar Symposium ISS 2020, Professor Dr. Zaidatun Tasir, Dean Faculty of Social Science and Humanities, University Technology Malaysia, Dr. Rachel Buchanan, Deputy Head of School Postgraduate Teaching and Learning, University of Newcastle, Australia, distinguished guests, participants of the seminar, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the second day of 5th Inspirational Scholar Symposium ISS 2020, the virtual conference edition. I am Azam Arni Muhammad Noor and it is my pleasure to be the MC for today. Honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, let us make dua that all that we think, say, plan and act during this program will be bestowed by the Almighty with bounty of rahmat in ensuring its true success. I would like to invite Mr. Nik Muhammad Batzani Haddad Ibrahim to lead the dua recitation for Muslim and a moment of silence.
On this blessed morning, in conjunction with the 5th Inspirational Scholar Symposium, ISS 2020, we grateful towards you in favor of all the infinite blessing to us, your humble servant, to live in safe and prosperous life. We seek your blessing for a flawless progress of this event from the beginning till the end. Ya Rahman, please bless us with your taufiq and hidayah. Please guide Universiti Utara Malaysia to greatness, peace, glory and prosperity in this world and the hereafter. Make us a responsible intellectual, granted us with a valuable knowledge that will be beneficial to mankind in order to gain your mardatillah. Ya Munzilal Barakat, bestow peace to our beloved country, Malaysia. Preserve us from any threat and disaster, neither man-made nor natural disaster. And to you, Ya Allah, we ask for security and prosperity upon us, our leaders, and our country. Bestow passion in us in order to face the challenge from you. Please accept our deeds and please reward us accordingly. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Thank you.
Amin ya Rabbal Alamin. Thank you, Mr. Nik Muhammad Bajzani. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to introduce our first keynote speaker today, Professor Dr. Zaidatun Tasir from Universiti Technology Malaysia, UTM. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Dr. Zaidatun Tasir is a professor of educational technology at the Department of Educational Science, Maths and Creative Multimedia, School of Education, Faculty of Social Science and Humanities, Universiti Technology Malaysia. She is the Dean of Faculty of Social Science and Humanities from 2019 to 2021. Before this, she held numerous key positions. Among these were the chairperson of Malaysian Deans of Graduate Schools Councils, MIDEX, until 2019, Dean of School of Graduate Studies, UTM, and a research group leader of Creative and Innovative Technology in Education site under Smart Digital Community Research Alliance, Deputy Dean, Social Science of School of Graduate Studies, Deputy Dean, Postgraduate Studies and Research, Head of Department of Postgraduate Studies, and also as Information Technology Manager in Faculty of Education. Professor Dr. Zaidatun also involved as a panel in preparing documentation for 11th Malaysia Plan 2016-2020 Trust Tree Harnessing Talent Effectiveness of Soft Programs under Ministry of Education. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Dr. Zaidatun obtained her first degree, Bachelor of Science Computing with Education Maths Honours from UTM, Master in Education, Educational Media Computers from Arizona State University, USA, and PhD in Educational Technology from Universiti Technology Malaysia in 2002. Her research interests and expertise include design and development of computer and web-based instructions, multiple intelligence through computer-based instruction, problem-based learning through technology, social networking tools in education, and also online social learning model. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Zaidatun Tasir to deliver her keynote speech entitled Innovation for Future Learning, Achievement and Challenges. Please welcome Professor Dr. Zaidatun.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, thank you IIS 2020 committee members for inviting me to share my research and experience related to innovation in higher ed for future learning. So let me share my slide. Okay. So first of all, of course, grateful to Allah that we are actually able to have together today, this morning in the sharing sessions, that I hope that my sharing session will benefit all of you there in Malaysia and outside Malaysia. The topics that I would like to discuss today is innovation for future learning, achievements and challenges. So let us try to reflect back our imagination about the future. I still remember during my childhood time, I imagined that the future has flying cars around us. And I also, working in the education research area, I thought that in the future, what we can do is that we just wire our student brain and we just can transfer information to their brain without might be teach them face-to-face or through online learning. That's my imagination. And we also can imagine that might be we have what we call it memory boosting brain implants to boost up the memory because we are in the future. So we thought that we can do that. And actually there is a research doing on memory boosting brain implants that looking at how to assist students in terms of teaching and learning. Okay. And this is the future learnings where we can see the effects of IoT and IoE in higher eds and at school levels. Everybody knows that Internet of Things is a systems of interrelated computing devices, mechanicals and digital machines, object, animals or peoples that are provided with unique identifiers and the ability to transfer data over a network without requiring human to humans or human to computer interaction. So this is one of the examples. If you're using IoT in 21st century schools, you have what we call it smart school transportations, you have the smart school building management, the smart student health, the smart classroom, smart STEAM lab, smart cafeteria or mini mart, the student activity tracking, and the student IoT project management. With all of this kind of smart system, we can just capturing the student data, then we can analyze it and try to assist their teaching and learning. This is if we're able to do this in our universities and in the school. And I believe in the university outside Malaysia, they are doing these kinds of implementations of IoT in higher ed. With that, this is going to be the 5 topics that I would like to share for today related to innovation in higher ed for future learning. The first one is related to the new theories, tools, spaces, environments, and community. The second one is on the new knowledge, learning, and teaching skills. The third one is on innovation in research in learning and teaching, the achievement, and of course, the challenges. Let us look at the first topic, what actually the things that we have to be aware before we start to innovate something related to learning and teaching for higher ed or for school also in the future. So this is what the future learning, the 7 most powerful ideas about future learning, the shift from what we can see it, and it happened nowadays. We can see that the learning shift from physical to digital. It shift also from the standard to habit, from compliance to play, where you can see the self-directed learning has been the main focus of learning nowadays. From school to the communities, and this is totally true nowadays because due to the pandemic of COVID-19, the students are not at the school anymore, they are at home. So the learning community has been changed a lot from their classmates to the learning communities that surrounding them. From reactions to interactions, from isolation to connectivism, and from privacy to transparency. And with this kind of 7 most powerful ideas shift in learning today, my assumptions that I believe the future is now. If we're talking about when is going to be the future, the questions that asking by everybody, I asked these questions in 1998 when I did my master's at US. When is going to be the future? So I believe the future is now. This is where we're looking towards on the transformation of higher ed, transformation of learning and teaching at higher ed. Okay, let us look at the new tools, the innovation in new tools that we have around us. There are so many teaching and learning tools that have been innovated by people that working in the technologies. This is the top 200 tools for learning 2020s that analyzed by Jean Hartz. And you can see from her analysis in 2020, it looks like few teaching educational tools has been jumped up to different levels. Here you can see that YouTube written as the #1 position that it has held for the 5 years running. Zoom has zoomed up to the list into the 2nd spot this year. Now this is clear due to the pandemic COVID-19. We are not only using Zoom for our online classes, but people use it for online meetings, keep in touch with families, friends, and so on. Microsoft Teams also has been jumped up into #5 spot, but has not quite caught with Zoom. And you can see also WhatsApp there. Okay, has been jumping from the in 2019. I think WhatsApp is around #23. Now has been jumping to #10. So this is where the developments of educational tools that you can see in 2020. not only on the educational tools, but the top 6 techs and technology innovations that affect education a lot is actually, the first one is virtual reality. The second one is uh, artificial intelligence and machine learning. This is related that if we can capture the learning data behind the system or through the face-to-face learning and teaching process, we can actually do some things to assist the students in learning. The cloud computing, the social media, the use of biometrics, and the 3D printings. And the use of biometrics is actually has been explored by most researchers nowadays, where the biometrics modalities has been developed very well through our senses. It actually aligns the technologies or detecting related to our senses has been developed very well. I'll give one examples of the use of face recognition identification in teaching and learning. If we can have this in our class, might be we can actually know, we can observe the feelings of our student while we are teaching in front of our students through the face-to-face technique. We only can actually assume based on their facial expression, but through the face recognition, the system can detect whether they are happy, whether they are sad, whether they are actually confused, might be, or surprised, or they are calm on learning. So with this, actually we can get the real data, and we can actually set up what we call the intelligent classroom behavior management system, where the technology can assist us in learning and teaching. Not only the innovation in tools and innovation in the technology, the innovation on the learning spaces also take place in the future, for the future learning. So nowadays, learning spaces is not only in the classroom. Due to the COVID-19 pandemics, we can see that learning can take place at any times, at anywhere. So this is the places, I think some of our students familiar enough, they might be actually at home right now having the online classes. Due to the internet line speeds that not really fast at their home, they can just go to any outlets like Burger King, McDonald's, maybe they are in the bus, at the beach, shopping centers, in the libraries, or actually in the dining hall to attend the online classes. And not only the learning spaces, the learning community also has been transformed very well. The students is not only having their classmate as part of their learning communities, but they actually have to deal with their sibling. If they actually access the online learning at home, they actually has to deal with their, might be the kids, for those who are married students, they might be have babies to take care, because while having classes, their neighbor, their grandmothers and grandparents, and also their parents and the communities surrounding them at home. So this is where we can see that the learning community related to everyone. So next, we move to the theories and knowledge related to teaching and learning, because we have to know that there is a development of theories and learning. There are two elements that I would like to discuss today is related to theories and learning theories and technologies. So you can see that this is a analysis done by Grabowski in 2009. When you talk about technology and technology and learning theory, you have to understand very well how do they work together. So the first developments of learning theory and technology happen in period 1, where you can see that at this moment, this is the behaviorist. At this moment, is behaviorist learning theory has been developed very well. You can see that at this moment, the behaviorist learning theory, they cannot actually answer what actually the learning and teaching process through the technology. At that moment, you can see that the behaviorist is looking at learning is just something that you input into the black box. The black box is your brain, and waiting for the output from the black box without looking at what happened in the brain. Okay, and that moment in terms of technology, it has been developed very well. And it moved to the period number 2, where at this moment is related to connectivism, where you can see that brain has been represented as computer system, where you have input, process, storage, and output. And through this phase, you can see that the learning theory has been developed quite well at the first period, and then but the learning, the technology has not been able to catch up on it because before it had been developed very well, but not so many teachers or educators use it because the learning theory cannot actually answer what happened to the learning process through the technology. And you can see it another cycles of mismatch happen when the technology has been developed very well, the interaction media has been introduced in teaching and learning, while the learning theory actually go down here and it go up, reach back to the certain level in period 3, where at that moment the technology has not been cannot actually cope what the learning theories, psychologists explain about teaching and learning. At the end, you can see that in period number 3, in the period number 3, you can see that the learning that they actually work together side by side, and actually in the future we hope that those looking at learning theories, the psychologies and the educational technologies, they can work together so that they can share with us what actually can be done related to learning and teaching through technology. And with that, you can see that there is a development of the existing learning theory from behaviorist, connectivism, and constructivism, where you can see the definitions of learning is totally different from one school of thought to another school of thought. It started with the learning as a process of reacting to external stimuli, and we move at learning is the process of acquiring and storing information based on connectivism. And in the constructivism, learning is a process of constructing and subjective reality based. But what we have right now is that in the digital age, the new learning theory of connectivism, which actually define learning as a process of connecting nodes of information sources. So learning based on the connectivism, learning is no longer the changes of behavior. Learning also involve a social network relation. Learning is where the learners will contact and interact with content, expert, and peers. And learning is where the student will interact with society, environments, technology, and surrounding. And the crowds in learning is massive and complex. So, and with that, you can see Dewey, the theory of inquiry by Dewey in 1938 has been introduced on to communities of learning. Learning with the communities through technology can be identified right now through web pages, learning management system, and FB group. But the development, the learning evolution has moved towards learning with the crowds, where you have MOOCs, Facebook pages, webinars. Now there's so many webinars that are free that the student can attend at any time, which are less structured and have a cohort less base. So the cohorts of the learning is not only at the same age of the students, but they can actually consist of varieties levels of students. And with that, it required the learners to have certain skills, new knowledge related to teaching and learning, which are independent learners, high self-regulation, highly motivated learners, high social presence, awareness, and of course, they must have wisdom in learning, peer assessment, and self-assessment. With the learning evaluations, we can see that few learning theories has been emerged due to the developments of the existing theory, looking at the online behaviors and capability of brains. A few learning theories that have been emerged, which are distributed cognition, socially shared cognition, connectivism, and situated cognition. Why do we need to know all these new theories? Because when we want to innovate something related to teaching and learning, this is what the theory explain now in the process of learning nowadays, how learning take place nowadays among our students. So the next one, after we look at the new knowledge and learning and teaching skills, we move on the innovations in research in L&T that related to how innovation in teaching and learning at higher ed. With that, the new research focus that we should actually concentrate in the future and now is related to social capitals, shared knowledge and resources, who learn from whom, who talks to and give helps to and collaborate with whom, because learning is related to collaborations between the learners. And what do they learn from each other? Okay, which media support which kinds of learning? What outcomes do this relation build? How do resources flow in the network? We should actually analyze on it. And what are the student online learning behavior interactions that enhance learning? Because most of the learning process, especially during this time, happen through online learning medium. And with that, if we're going to use the letters and the data analysis that appropriates to answer on the student interactions, like for example, we can use the social network analysis to show and to analyze the online learning behavior among our students. Through this social network analysis, we will know that who are dominated in our class and that help others in learning and teaching. And technology, believe me or not, is already altering our brains. Might be the technology is not altering our own brain, but they are altering our kids and our students and our undergraduate student brains, where technology actually change our attention. Technology also affect our emotion, and technology also actually affect our decision making. Okay, let us look at the achievement, some of the achievement related to innovation in learning and teaching for future learning. So I can categorize it to certain duration of time. And when I talk about innovation, I would like to share some of the local research that have been done in Malaysia that I experienced also doing this research related to innovation in L&T for higher eds and for future learning. So in 1999, I think at that moment, most of the research is looking at the development of courseware, the standalone application for learning and teaching. And that moments, there are so many are looking at the learning styles in teaching and learning. And in 2001, the constructivist has been, I think, has been focused a lot in teaching and learning in Malaysia, that looking at the producing and formulating the instructional design frameworks for designing the educational software. And in 2005, personalized learning has been the focus of most of research in higher ed, and this is where we would like to prepare for our future personalized learning to the web-based learning management system, and also the personalized learning to the course learning through the learning courseware based on the digital learning object. At that moment, we still remember that there was quite numbers of research on digital learning object. This is some of the achievement. And the web-based simulations frameworks related to enhancing the student critical thinking, where we talk about how to enhance generic skill among our students. Then we talk about on how to innovate teaching and learning process that can enhance student generic skills. The automatic detections of learning styles. This is the research where the machine learnings, the learning analytics has been giving us opportunities, the educators, especially educators, opportunity to use it in our research related to teaching and learning. In 2013 and 2020, the achievements on the innovations looking at the learners' interactions and online behaviors and learning analytics. In 2013, the research is more on looking at the patterns of reflections in learning, where through the patterns of reflection, we can actually identify and we can get knowledge on how to encourage reflection through online learning among our students. And in 2014, we start to predict the learning models through online learning process, where if we can have the right learning models for the student to success in their learning, might be we can just give the models to the students and they just can follow the models, and it will actually reduce the time, the learning times that they should focus, so that they can actually perform very well in their learning. And in 2014, we are looking at the knowledge constructions, strategies in the computer supported learning, enhancing collaborative reasoning skill also, and we start to produce a frameworks that related to scaffolding in learning certain subject through Facebook, through social media. This is one of the examples of my works that looking at the frameworks of meta-cognitive scaffolding in learning authoring system through Facebook. And another works that related to the learning analytic interventions. We should actually embrace the technology in our teaching and learning. Although some of us might be disagree on teaching and learning should embed technology in it, but the technology is there. At the situation right now, if we don't use the technology in our learning and teaching, so we're not going to have classes. Yes, because we cannot meet the students. So through the learning analytics, some of the samples of the achievement that have been achieved among Malaysian researcher, we have been producing what we call it the learning framework, so that the student can refer it based on the learning analytic interventions that focusing on the personalized learning, where the student can see how can they speed up their learning process through technology. So and this is just to share on 25 years achievement innovation in L&T and how it actually fit into the existing learning theory. Because remember, although we are using technology in our learning and teaching, it must be reflect on the contribution to the learning theory, to the facts of that explain how learning take place. So this is part of it, the 25 years of study. You can see that we are moving towards to the learning theories that related to neuroscience. Neuroscience is looking at the structure of the brain in terms of neurons and the cells in the brains, that how we can actually what you call it, boost up learnings if we know how brain works. And the research contribution and the achievement, if we put it side by side with the learning theories, this is part of it. You can see that the technology in innovation in learning and teaching related to technology is not going far from the learning theory. With that, few, what we call it, the innovation in terms of pedagogies has been introduced very well from the research. And for those who are focusing on research nowadays, this is the sharing on the paradigm shift of research focus based on observations that research trend in Malaysia and outside Malaysia. You can see that the trend of research in L&T for new normals, we should actually focusing on the curriculum, the unstructured curriculum. I think I still remember yesterday, Associate Professor Dr. Zuhainis actually share about our fluid organic curriculums, that the curriculum must be unstructured, integrated. That's kind of the innovation that we should focus for future learning, the innovative pedagogies, the holistic pedagogies, the holistic assessment. And we are should looking at the learning process in terms of what happens through the online learning. And the technologies has been developed very well, where we can use it in our teaching and learning. Okay, no doubt with so many achievements in innovation related to future learning, there must be a challenges. This is some of the challenges that I would like to share. First, we might going to ask ourselves, do our L&T innovation attract student attention and engagement? It's quite challenging also when you produce any innovation in learning and teaching for future learning. You might be in dilemma whether your innovation really works or not. The balance between learning theory versus technology, how much we should put the learning theory, how much that we should focus on technology. This is kind of dilemma that happens, that must be considered among what you call it, educators. Sustainability of the innovation itself, whether it's sustained or not. The crisis, the change of mindsets of learning preferences. Now, most of educators are worried a lot after the pandemic COVID-19, what happened to our students, the mindset and the learning preferences of our students is totally different after the pandemic COVID-19. The assessment part, the assessment that fit and align with the innovation that you develop. The Z generation, the alpha thinking, nobody knows what happened and what are their thinking. So because we are not actually Gen Z, actually we are different generation, X or Y. So we have to understand their thinking. And other challenges that related to also the skills and how far good are you in innovating something in teaching and learning. And also creativity is so important when you would like to innovate something. So in conclusion, as educators, focus on innovation and future learnings. We should focus on the approaches of pedagogy, and cybergogy have been explained very well as a 21st century teaching and learning. How can we use it in our teaching and learning? How can we innovate, producing lesson plan, producing learning activities that fit into these kinds of innovative pedagogies that fall under Education 4.0's innovative pedagogies. Innovate anything that works. I would like to advise everybody, those who are actually with us this morning, innovate anything that works. Don't just focusing on the technology. Innovate anything. As long as it works in your class, then use it, because you are the one who knows the backgrounds of your student. Be creative, be bold, and be happy and be passionate in teaching and learning. That's some of the tips that I would like to share with all of us. And of course, what's next? This is next that in the future, and it's happening now. The psychologists and the technologies, they have to work together with the help of educational technologies. They have to synergize. The synergy among them can actually prepare us and help us for producing many innovations for future learning. Okay, with that, I end my sharing sessions. If you have any questions, I open the floor to questions and answer. Thank you very much. And then I return back the sessions to the chair of ISS 2020 conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. If anyone has any question, I'm sure that Prof will be pleased to answer.
So, Assalamualaikum, Prof. Zaidatul.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you for joining our conference. So actually I have one question. This is a normal question. Actually, the problem in the curriculum, we try to balance between the technology and the new innovation, but in other side, so we got a problem with the accreditation body, So for example, we can see that nowadays the COVID time, so we can see something like the industrial training. So actually industrial training, we can do use the technology to solve the industrial problem, but we can see that a lot of university, they still waiting for the face-to-face. They don't want to use the technology because they say that this one can achieve the learning outcome and so on. Okay, but actually what I can say that the technology can solve the problem. At the same time, everything we need to put in the syllabus or curriculum. So I need Prof. Zaidatul opinion to give the clear picture about this. Okay, thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Doctor, for asking the questions. Actually, when you talk about technology, the use of technology in learning and teaching, yeah, not everybody actually believe on it, and one thing that I'm so happy, not because of COVID-19. I'm not happy because of COVID-19, but the one that I'm happy nowadays is that because of COVID-19, it has been forced everybody, all the professors, they only have one choice, the online learning platform, to do their online learning. And because of the COVID-19, it needs a COVID-19 to transform everybody around, especially in Malaysia. I'm not talking about the world, because I've been one of the online learners. I did my master's at US, and partly my class actually were blended. So I actually stay at home. I having a class through online learning environments. So because of COVID-19 has been forced everybody to believe in technology. Everybody is so creative nowadays. The professors in the university are so creative nowadays. And for professors in Malaysia, don't worry. I last month, I had a session with the Germany professors in one of the forum. They say their professor also reluctant to use online platform as part of their learning process. Of course, you did not meet the student. You did not see the student. Of course, the human touch is there's no human touch. Okay, there's no human touch. But one thing that we have to remember is that is the future. Nowadays, our learners is not actually staying around the university. They are actually outside Malaysia, especially the international student. Especially if you're focusing on postgraduate. The trend of the postgraduate learners nowadays is remote student. They are working adults. They would like to continue their study, but they cannot come to the university. So this is where I can see the opportunities that everybody has to embrace and use it in our learning process. However, to change the belief among educators, to change the belief among, especially to the accreditation bodies, it need a research there where we need to show to them that it works. Sometimes it give better learning outcome to the students compared to the face-to-face learning process. And this is the roles of researcher that working on educational technology research. Of course, as I did, you can see that in my sharing session, I explain a lot about the learning theories. I'm not only explaining on the technologies, because if you work a lot with technologies but it did not reflect back to the learning theories, of course nobody would like to hear your research finding. So this is a thing where I believe, yeah, because I face the difficulty also with the accreditation body. Some of the accreditation body, they are okay, they are quite open. Okay, this is where we need to have a session with the accreditation bodies, not MQA. I think MQA is quite okay with the process of online learning, but certain accreditation bodies, they still need face-to-face, like the industrial training and so on. But if we can actually bridge the process of face-to-face industrial training and face-to-face online industrial training, and find the solution how much that we can make it equivalence between these two, then I believe the accreditation body has to be open enough, especially at the moments of COVID-19. And I believe, okay, don't ever turn back to the situations where we have totally face-to-face. The future is going to be the blended learning. If the accreditation bodies cannot accept 100% online industrial training, accept it as partial parts of industrial training will be happen through online. And nowadays, you can see that people working in industry, sometimes they are not in the industry, they are at other countries, but they might be one of the what I call it, employee of the company in Malaysia. They are at US, but they are employee of a company in Malaysia. So that's the trend. This is the accreditation body. They have to be open enough, and it looks like it needs the work by the council, the works by the Ministry of Higher Eds, who need to actually be a person between the university and the accreditation bodies, so that they can accept this is the way forward, and it's not going to be the future. Now we are actually in the future. I believe this is the future. Okay, thank you for asking me. I hope that I can answer your question.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Zaidatul. I can see that Prof. Rosalina in our room now. Prof. Rose asking about the AI. You know, is it Prof. Rosalina around?
Yeah.
Yeah. Prof, can you ask the question, Prof, based on the chatting here?
But I can read it. Okay, how best do we introduce technology like AI and big data to non-technical educators, especially social scientists? Okay, My background is related to educations. Okay, I'm quite lucky because my area is educational technology. So I work both of it. My bachelor degree is in computer science in education. So I've been exposed on the application of computer science in education, and I believe very much about AI and big data analytics. Okay, but we have the really social scientists who did not have any ideas on anything about AI and big data, what the AI and big data can help them in teaching and learning. Okay, Prof. Rose, based on my experience, this is a job that has to be carried out by people in my area, educational technologies, those who actually have two areas, the education and the technology, because we believe in technologies and we can actually bridge the technologies into the education area. So because I work also with some of the data scientists, those who are actually focusing on AI and big data analytics, they also need information from the social scientists. What are the things that they can help the social scientists in terms of to speed up the learning process or to answer more about learning, especially to online learning. So I believe they can work together. My last slide, I did mention the synergy between the educationists and the technologists, those working with AI, and they need a person in the middle of them, which is educational technologies, who working a lot on how technologies, AI, big data, analytics really influence teaching and learning and really benefit the teaching and learning. So I believe this is where these three groups has to work together. If the social scientists only going to contact on people from the computer science without assistance from those from educational technologies, usually might be something like the chickens talking with the dog, because they are talking the different language. And this is where, Prof, I think nowadays is the best ways that we work together. Like what happened between us. I'm from education. We I work together with Prof Rose, and I work together with some of it with people from computer science, because I'm not actually expert pure in computer science, but I know how to channel the research in the computer science to education, and also I also can pass some of what the needs of people from social scientists, where the computer science researcher can help them in teaching and learning. So that is my answer, Prof. Rose. Okay, what else if I can read it? Okay, Prof. Karim asking that in the current time-based rigid curriculum structure, how does a fluid curriculum can be implemented? Okay, the main thing about why we cannot actually go far on innovation related to learning and teaching is because of the curriculum. Is because of the curriculum. We have so rigid curriculum. We have so fixed curriculum. Okay. In my another talks about curriculum, we need to change. We need to be open enough, because we are not producing a person like 20 years ago. We are producing students or future workers who might be not end up what they enroll into the university. Might be they actually enroll into engineering program, but when they go out there later on, they are not going to be an engineer. They are not in engineering program, they are not going to be an engineer. Might be they will change their profession. So how to get ready to the student? So the curriculum must be dynamic enough. And I believe at this moment, the 30% that have been given to all university to put it as anything that flexible, that if you want to revise your curriculum in the range of 30%, you just need to inform the Ministry of Higher Education. I think that's a very good platform. But if they can give us more, not only 30%, give autonomy to the university to think on the curriculum, trust the university, but just empower us with that. And of course, I think Malaysian university can go far in it, and we can innovate more on teaching and learning for future learning. I believe the rigid curriculum is one of the factors that not really give us full freedoms on to innovate in higher ed. And what I did now with the rigid curriculum, I can be flexible in terms of teaching and learning. What I did now in my class is that I try to be flexible enough. I'm not following on the topics in my teaching and learning. I'm not following from week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. No, I'm actually combining the topic from week 3 with the topic with week 12, week 13, I combine it together and I'm focusing on that topic in my class. That is what I can control in my class. Okay, because I cannot control the curriculum. And what we can do is that offer more elective across discipline, not only focusing on the elective in one program only. And as a dean of the faculty, okay, this is what I'm doing right now, because under me, I have five schools of social sciences. And I just inform all the chairs that we must offer elective across school. And we also must allow the student to take elective outside the Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, from engineering, from built environment faculty, because we would like to prepare the student for the future. It's not for us, it's for the future, it's for the students. And this is where we have to be tolerant, we have to find a way, okay, for me, okay? So what will be the next game changer in higher education? The game changers in in the futures of higher education, of course, the people's working a lot on innovation in teaching and learning, like Prof. Karim is one of the key players. I think continue doing that, Prof. But what we want is that from the ministry, if they can open a little bit freedom to us on the designing of curriculum, the MQA, I involve a lot with the MQA work. I believe MQA has been opened very much by introducing the Apple C, Apple A, Apple Q is coming, micro credential is coming. Last month, I had a meeting with MQA. They say about hundreds, especially private university in Malaysia, sending documentations for Apple Q, for having, and also Apple C, the credit transfer. So that they are allowed to considering modules or any online materials outside their curriculums to be counted as part of credit transfer. So the game changer is that in the futures, that the technologies go ahead, continue your work, the educational technologies, explore more on it, produce more theories that related to the technology, not only focusing on technology, but come up with the new knowledge, new skills, publish and share with everybody that it works. It has been changed, the process of learning and teaching. And one thing that we have to remember, that our students nowadays, they have totally different thinking than us. I sometimes did not understand my students, especially the undergraduate student, the first year student, because the thinking and the way of learning is totally different. They have been equipped with technology around them. So I believe the game changers, the ones who are working in technology works, continue working on it, but the educational technologies, they have to transform and have to see the opportunities of bridging the technologies and the psychologies. Okay, 30% room is good to start with, but with micro credentials, we can stretch beyond the 30%. This is what we can request to the ministry, Prof. Karim. And I actually agree on totally 100% up to the micro credentials. Is totally what we call it, degree that based on the student's design, the student who's going to craft their own degree. That is going to be the future. I hope that in Malaysia, in the futures, when the student enroll into the program, they are the one who are going to design what are the courses that they're going to follow. But of course, it must be quite structured a little bit, so that because we later on we're going to award them with a specific degree. So we might going to introduce what we call it a group of courses, where if they take this kind of group of courses, they will get this kind of degree and so on. But I'm not sure whether we are ready or not. Okay. Next questions by others. I agree with what has been mentioned here. If we can have 100% credit transfers in micro credentials, that's good. But then I think residential status is still there. Is required by MQA, have been released, I think, if not mistaken, certain duration of time the student must be here, unless you are running what we call it totally open distance learning program. If you're running open distance learning program at UTM, we have 3 program open distance learning program at the public university. we are told the student did not really need to come to Malaysia, and due to the and with the situation of COVID-19, it's an advantageous for us to having that kind of program. So I believe, so try to embark on this program, and this is not new. I think in US they have been introduced ODL, I think since 20 years ago, and we can accept it. There still quality is still there. Okay, what else? If I missed some of the questions, I think I answered most of it.
I'm so sorry, Prof, but we have to interrupt now, and yes, so sorry that we have to stop. Thank you so much, Prof.
Yeah, thank you very much to all, and keep working toward it. The last statement I put it: be bold, be brave, and be happy, and be passionate in your teaching and learning. Thank you very much. I think my sharing session today benefit some of you that together with us this morning. Thank you very much, the conference committee. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you very much, Prof, for the presentation and the sharing of the keynote on innovation for future learning, achievement and challenges.
Over the 30 years lifespan of the Universiti Utara Malaysia, we have also witnessed the genesis of this centre, which began as a unit called the Technology Teaching Unit. Began in 1986, way back in 1986. The centre then expanded into becoming a centre which is called the Teaching Innovation Centre, but worked together with the Educational Professional Advancement Centre in 1997. 4 years later, the centre was ready to work on its own, which is renamed as the University Teaching Learning Centre. Since 2001, UTLC has specifically been the sole provider for training for the academician, specifically in offering various aspects of technological and pedagogical workshops, such as research methods, case studies, the use of REP 2.0 into the teaching and learning, and various workshops available. The training period usually lasts from half day to 6 months, and it has been attended by instructors from within as well as outside of the university. We offer more than 20 workshops a year, so people come all the way to University Teaching Learning Centre not to just pick up on theories, but they also want to pick up on tools and techniques that they can apply in the work-based scenario as soon as possible, as soon as they go back to their workplace. So it's a very practical learning environment. There will be lots of exercises, case studies, group activities, and live presentations. So in a nutshell, what we're trying to do here at UTLC is we provide theory and practices with lots of hands-on activities, lots of problem solving, so that when they go back to their own context, they know what to do. So with all the knowledge and skills and tools and techniques, they are hopefully able to do better at what they do. We want people to enjoy attending our workshops and of course being with us, experiencing the beauty of learning and teaching, as well as the know-how of providing positive learning experiences for them as instructors and even more for their learners.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed to the next agenda. We are honored to introduce our second keynote speaker for today, Dr. Rachel Buchanan from University of Newcastle, Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Rachel Buchanan is the Deputy Head of School Postgraduate Teaching and Learning for the School of Education at the University of Newcastle, Australia. She is a Senior Lecturer in Education and teaches Educational Foundations, Policy and Politics, and Educational Change Management courses in the Master of Teaching and Master of Educational Leadership and Management programs. Dr. Buchanan has published in the areas of educational philosophy, pedagogy, and education policy and politics. Her research centers on social justice and equity in education, leading to her work in projects on academic literacy, widening participation, educational policy, and equity issues associated with the increased use of digital technologies. Her current research project uses post-digital theory to explore the emerging frontiers of educational technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that we invite Dr. Rachel Buchanan to give her keynote speech entitled Embracing Diversity and Building Communities with Technology. Please welcome Dr. Rachel Buchanan.
Good morning. Thank you all for having me. Before I get started, I'll just share my screen. And hopefully you're all looking at the right screen. Feel free to message me if you're not looking at the PowerPoint. I would just like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you today from the traditional custodians of the land upon which I work and live, which is the Pambalong clan of the Awabakal people. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present, the custodians of knowledge in my community here in Australia, and those elders in your community in Malaysia. And thank you very much for having me. Today I'll be discussing embracing diversity and building community with technology. And the presentation that I'd like to share with you today is going to be theoretical and based on principles, because I'd like to get you to think about your own practice. I'm not going to come here and give you a 10-point plan and a this always works kind of formula. I'd rather give you the theoretical tools and thinking tools for you to think about technology and community in new ways. So that's my goal for the presentation, and I hope you enjoy what I'll be sharing with you today. So, as you are no doubt aware, there's been discourses for the last 10 years or so that higher education is changing, and that technology is going to radically reshape the entire sector and change what we will be doing and the practices in which we find ourselves. And so for 20 years or so that, firstly, the internet was going to change everything, then web tools, and now things like virtual reality are coming in, and there's, people are talking about there's no need for brick and mortar campuses, because students can just beam in from their places of, their residence, put on a pair of goggles and find themselves virtually at university. And so there's been this hype for several decades about how university needs to reshape itself because of changing workplaces. And yet what we've found is that even though we've all incorporated more and more technologies into our work and into our practices, universities remain, and that students seem to prefer to the community that can be developed face-to-face. But of course, that's not the whole story. And while a lot of the discourse and the research into using technologies tends to portray the state of the art with technology. So there'll be a study that might, for example, talk about virtual reality and show you an example of a successful practice. What a lot of the research doesn't portray is the state of the actual, how people actually use technology and how the students actually experience it in places where technology access might not be guaranteed, in community colleges and non-well resourced universities. So the policies and the discourse around technology changing higher education doesn't always reflect what's going on the ground, and doesn't always reflect the experiences of those of us trying to implement technology into our teaching practice. So there's, while there's these messages about how technology can be radically changed if we successfully embed, how higher education can be radically rechanged if we successfully embed technology into our teaching. As we try to embed technology, often as lecturers, we experience trials and tribulations of teaching with technology. So our students may not always have good internet access, and may not always have access to the tools that would allow us to do some of the things that we envision as being transformative. So, we might get our students to make videos or podcasts, but they may not necessarily have the equipment that would enable them to make good use of these innovative assessment practices. We might try to get students to connect with one another, but there might be a difference in their level of knowledge and skills around using technology for connection. So they may not be able to use the technologies in ways that would be necessarily helpful, and ways that would help us further our goals of making education more effective. So some of the problems that lecturers have found with using technologies, and a lot of these have been while technologies were able to offer really good solutions for COVID this year, people that work well with technology have argued that the online education provided is not necessarily best practice, but rather best practice for crisis, that many people around the world have been able to use technology in a way to continue students' education, but doesn't necessarily reflect what is actually possible with technology, because to use technology well in teaching and learning takes a lot of time. It takes more preparation than face-to-face methods of teaching. Students can complain that the online education can be isolating, that they're not able to have the same experience as a face-to-face. So often online education is seen as a poor cousin or a lesser experience. And so there's several trials and tribulations that can be found when we're working with online technologies for teaching and learning. So there's the lack of equality and equity in the technologies that students may have access to. There's often a perceived lack of connection, lack of skills and knowledge how to use these technologies best, lack of coherence. So what one lecturer does, the next lecturer around the corridor might be doing something completely different. So even though there's a whole host of policy documents about using technology more and how it can save education, the lived experience does not always live up to the hype. So before I get into kind of cutting through the lived experience and thinking about using technology differently, I'd just like to share a theoretical framework that I have found very useful in my practice for thinking about technology differently in order to be more productive in our use of technology. And so this is the post-digital framework. And post-digital theory says that the digital revolution has already occurred, that technology in highly technologicalized societies, so not universally, but in times and places where technology use is normalized, the digital revolution has already occurred. So we are already very interconnected, and technology is embedded seamlessly into our lives to the point where it's more noticeable in its absence. So, oh my goodness, the Wi-Fi has gone out. Then all of a sudden we notice how dependent we are upon it. So many students carry around supercomputers in their pocket with my phone, I was trying to show you, was disappearing into the virtual background. But, our students have access to supercomputers as a regular communication device, which 20 years ago, smartphones didn't even exist. Students that are in university now have grown up with the internet and don't know a world without the internet. Technology in higher education is used for assessment, recording attendance, administration, plagiarism detection, It's used for a variety of demonstration of vocational needs. So if you're teaching nursing, they're using the types of nursing technologies. If you're teaching occupational therapy, you're using those type of technologies. So technology surrounds our students. And while there's a discourse around technology that it will revolutionize higher education and it will revolutionize the workforce, a post-digital perspective says that revolution has already occurred. So the question is no longer who has access to digital technologies, but rather how well people productively integrate these into their lives. And in fact, the term post-digital is intended to acknowledge the current state of technology while rejecting the conceptual shift implied in the term digital education revolution. And this shift, which is apparently going to be as abrupt as the on-off or 0-1 logic of the machines that now pervade our daily lives, is the way that Pepperell and Punt explain what we mean by post-digital. And when we think about post-digital, it's not post in the sense of postmodern or post-history, which is an irreconcilable break with what's gone before. It's post more like post-feminism, which is a conceptual theoretical change from mainstream feminism that incorporates some of those insights, but is also incorporating new ways of thinking about feminism, or post-communist, which is a way of thinking about the societies that the Eastern Bloc societies that exist post the communist and the fall of the Berlin Wall, or post-apocalypse, where the apocalypse has already happened, but we're participating in the changed reality. So post-digital is saying we have changed our relationship with technology, and we should no longer be fixated on digitalizing everything, because everything's already fairly digitalized. And so a post-digital perspective suggests that we need to think in teaching and learning, not be fixated on the technology or the digital element, but on the digital and the non-digital practices, the material practices, and the social relationships. So those are some of the things that I'd like us to consider when we're working with technology to embrace diversity and build communities. So as a provocation, I'd like to turn now to the work that has come out of the Digital Research Centre at the University of Edinburgh, where I was a visiting scholar in 2016. And they have produced a manifesto for online teaching that encourages people to think about online teaching in different ways to how it's usually conceived. And this manifesto was developed using the teachers and researchers in their Masters of Digital Education program, which has taught thousands of students over the last decade. And so they've come up with a different ways of thinking about online education. So I'd like to share this manifesto with you and highlight the points in the manifesto, and then I'm going to pull out some points that speak to me as an educator about how I think about those points as a way of departure from the normal ways of thinking about online education. So the manifesto says that online can be the privileged mode. Distance is a positive principle, not a deficit. In online education, place is differently, not less important. Online. Text has been troubled. Many modes matter in representing academic knowledge. We should attend to the materialities of digital education. The social isn't the whole story. Openness is neither neutral nor natural. It creates and depends on closures. Can we stop talking about digital natives? Digital education reshapes its subjects. The possibility of the online version is overstated. There are many ways to get it right online. Best practice neglects context. Distance is temporal, affective, political, not simply spatial. Aesthetics matter. Interface design shapes learning. Massiveness is more than learning at scale. It also brings complexity and diversity. Online teaching need not be complicit with the instrumentalization of education. A digital assessment can live on. It can be iterative, public, risky, and multi-voiced. Remixing digital content redefines authorship. Contact works in multiple ways. Face-to-face time is overvalued. So online teaching should not be downgraded to facilitation. Assessment is an act of interpretation, not just measurement. Algorithms and analytics recode education. Pay attention. A routine of plagiarism detection structures in distrust. Online courses are prone to cultures of surveillance. Visibility is a pedagogical and ethical issue. Automation need not impoverish education. We welcome our new robot overlords. Sorry, we welcome our new robot colleagues. And don't succumb to campus envy. We are the campus. And that last point is this idea that distance or online students aren't real students in education, that the face-to-face students have the real experience and not those experiencing online education. So what I've just shared with you is the entirety of the Manifesto for Online Teaching. And now I'll just pull out some of those points and examine them more closely for rethinking about online education and teaching with technology in ways that are productive for building community and embracing diversity. Online can be the privileged mode. Distance is a positive principle, not a deficit. So often we think, and this form of thinking has pervaded some of the responses to COVID-19 when all of our education had to shift online, that this is going to be a lesser experience for our students. However, many students find online extremely helpful because of the flexible nature. I know here on my campus, students like online education because they no longer have to fight for car parking space and no longer have to pay for parking, which sounds trivial, but students found that meant a lot to them. Online education allows students the flexibility of studying in their own time, particularly when we incorporate asynchronous experiences and don't just depend on the notion of synchronous learning where everybody has to be there at the same time. Distance also means that we're tapping into a variety of contexts and cultures, and we can have students from many places and many countries participating in our educational opportunities. And that helps people learn from each other and have a less homogenous experience and understand the differences of the learners in the group, which can make education better meet students' needs. So rather than thinking about online as being a deficit and not being as positive as the face-to-face experience, this manifesto proclaims that online can actually be the privileged mode and can offer advantages rather than trying to get students in the same place at the same time for a learning experience. Place is differently, not less important online. So in face-to-face education, place is extremely important because we get our students all to the same place at the same time. But with online, we're changing the importance of place, and place becomes rather than being where everyone is, a shared place, we're learning from one another and our students being located all in different places. And we can tap into what students' place means to them. So in Australia, we think about place in terms of the land and who that land is, the traditional owners of the land. So I'm coming to you from a Awabakal land where people have been teaching and learning for thousands of years, and that shapes how I think about education. And all of our students likewise come from a place with meaning. And so that meaning we can learn from each other and share the different meanings from the different places that our students are coming to us from in an online context. Can we stop talking about digital natives? This doesn't mean that our students haven't grown up with the internet, because obviously they have in this day and age. We're 2 decades into the 21st century, but it doesn't, the conceptualization of students as digital natives suggests that this means that they are all automatically good with technology. But what's been found when we unpack the notion of digital natives is that not everybody has access to technology. So even though the internet has existed for some 30 years, that doesn't mean that all of our students are equally experienced and equally skilled with using online technologies. It also means that if our students are from an affluent enough background that they have grown up with the internet and are used to internet technologies, it doesn't mean that they have the knowledge and skills to use those technologies for educational purposes. So when a conceptualization of something like digital natives erases the differences between our students. And so when thinking about meeting our students' needs, because they are a technological generation, it's not necessarily helpful to think about them in terms like digital native, because it doesn't allow us to meet their needs and to understand their different experiences with technology. And it doesn't help us think about the skills we need to provide them to make the best use of educational technologies. Text has been troubled. Many modes matter in representing on academic knowledge. So traditionally in universities, the essay is kind of the gold star way of representing academic knowledge. But technology allows us to assess our students in a whole host of ways. We can attest their verbal skills, their visual skills, their cooperative and collaborative skills. Technology gives us a whole host of ways of getting students to represent their academic knowledge. So we no longer have to depend on text. And in fact, if we maintain that reliance on text, we're not using technology to its full advantage. We're simply substituting pen and paper for a laptop, which we're using as a notebook. So one way to really take advantage of technology is to start thinking about assessment in completely different ways, and to not be bound by text-based forms of knowledge and text-based representations of academic knowledge. We should attend the materialities of digital education. The social isn't the whole story. So often in online education, we talk about things like the cloud, which sounds like this space that's not a really real space, but the cloud is simply a way of saying servers that sit in other countries or in other locations. And so there is a materiality that underpins digital technologies. There's rare earth minerals that have been mined. There's labor relations that have gone into making the tools that we use. And critical scholars call on us to think about these material realities and to consider the ways that not everybody has access to particular technologies. And when we rely on them, who are we including and who are we excluding, and what relations are we maintaining by depending all the time on specialist digital technologies. Digital education shapes its subjects, and the possibility of the online version is overstated. So when I talk about the online version there in inverted commas, what they mean is the idea that every face-to-face encounter can be reproduced online. It's the way in which we school our students in certain ways. If we're meeting them in face-to-face contexts, we are shaping their subjectivities as future professionals. So when I meet my future teachers, as a teacher educator, the students I teach are going to be teachers. When I meet them face to face, I'm able to model particular pedagogies that will enable them to teach in classrooms. So the way in which I speak, the way in which I move through the classroom as a way of controlling their behavior will shape them as future teachers and give them examples of the kind of practice that they can use. In the same way, when I'm teaching online, I'm shaping my students in other ways. I'm not able to model my use of space and walk through a classroom when I'm doing online teaching. I don't model the way you can take control of a classroom through the use of your voice when I'm teaching online, because it's a different context. So I'm shaping different behaviors online. So certain things can't be from face-to-face, can't be transferred to online, and certain online practices are different to what can be achieved in a face-to-face context. So it's worth thinking about these not as a one-to-one transfer, but as different modes of education which have different pedagogical possibilities and shape our students in different ways. There are many ways to get teaching with technology right, and this notion of best practice can neglect context. So I don't want to talk to you today and say, you have to do this. This is the best way to do technological education, because I would be putting an Australian-based notion of what works with students in Australia, in Newcastle, here, and trying to tell you that that's going to work in Malaysia, when in actual fact, the context may be very different. I come from the perspective of working with future teachers, and your students would be very different and from a variety of different fields. So rather than thinking about best practice, we should be thinking about what works in my context, who are my students, and how can I best meet their needs? What are their needs? Who are we training them to be? What kind of professionals? And what are the technologies that will help them with that? So that as educators, we all develop our practice based on the students we have, not based on this monolithic idea of best practice, because there is no practice that works in all contexts. Everything works somewhere and nothing works everywhere. So it's up to us as professionals to work out what works for the students we're working with. Distance is temporal, affective, and political, not simply spatial. So when we think about this idea of online education or distance education, we often think about it in spatial terms. But there's also temporal terms. So we may have students from all different time zones, in which case that will shape how we do our online education. And we might want to depend more on asynchronous teaching methods rather than synchronous teaching methods, so that students can work in their own time and not try to necessarily meet all together, because it may not be possible if we're thinking about distance in a temporal fashion. It can also be political in that a distance education can allow students who may not otherwise have the opportunity to learn to have access to particular education, because by not making students come to campus, we're not necessarily making them relocate. We're not necessarily making them setting up lives far from their own homes. So there are equitable, if we can give people the technology, there are possibilities for equality and equity via distance and online education provision. And so it's worth thinking about distance as not just simply the space between students and us, but also the political, the emotional, and the time-based aspects of distance or online education. Aesthetics matter. Interface design shapes learning. So often when teachers used to working with students in a face-to-face context transfer their work and try to work online, they don't necessarily think about setting their online learning system up in an aesthetically pleasing way. So I know a lot of teachers spend a long time setting their classroom up to offer students alternative means of learning with posters, instructions, making the room a pleasant place, but don't necessarily think about the aesthetics of the learning management systems. But if we can think about that and think about accessibility, so that students with hearing problems or sight problems can also access the materials we put online, we are able to help our students with their learning. So online has certain affordances. You can make things visually pleasing. You can use video, you can use sound. There's a whole way of incorporating design that makes online a more attractive proposition than just a plain interface. And often when we think about teaching, we focus on the content and not necessarily how we're going to present that content in a way that engages our students. So it is worth considering the importance of aesthetics as we're designing our online teaching environments. Online teaching need not be complicit with the instrumentalization of education. And I have to say, we have seen that a lot with COVID. It's just, how can we continue our provision of education as close to normal and kind of turn it into this content tick box? Yep, we've assessed them, the learning outcomes are met. But there's a lot more going on online. There's relationship building, there's community building, and we can do more than just simply operationalize or instrumentalize education as normal. We can build communities of practice. We can teach our students how to be collaborative and give them skills that live on beyond the courses and programs that they're involved with while they're involved in their university education. We can show them, for example, how to build a digital footprint and give them skills for presenting themselves professionally online that last way beyond the degree that we're working with them with. So we can do more than just meet the learning outcomes that we're required to work with our students to meet. Digital assessment can live on. It can be iterative, public, risky, multi-voiced. Remixing digital content redefines authorship. So often in education, in higher education, an assessment is a piece of work that is shared from the student to the person that's marking it. And it's not often shared with, unless we're doing presentations, it's not often shared even with the other students involved in the course. But online assessment gives us a way of sharing students' knowledge with one another. And we can do things like get students to build a wiki document together and build on one another's work and build on one another's knowledge to provide a more comprehensive piece of information that can be shared. We can get students to build websites that live on after they've finished their course. We can get students to critique other students' work or to critique media representations so that they produce multi-authored assessment tasks using videos or podcasts. There's a whole host of ways in which authorship doesn't have to be this relationship that only exists between the student and the person that's marking their work, that it can be shared with a range of students. Students from one year's assignment can be the basis for the next year's students to critique and build on. That because it's a digital world, things can live on in the digital space after the course is finished. So we can start thinking differently about the ways we assess our students and the type of assessments that we expect them to produce and build. Contact works in multiple ways and FaceTime is overvalued. So I work with quite a number of teachers and they're located around the world. So I have teachers in the Middle East, teachers in Asia, teachers in Australia, and many of them I've never spoken to because I run my courses asynchronously, and we contact via email and via discussion board, and that I find that through that way I'm better able to meet their needs, and the kind of asynchronous contact works well for my teachers who are students, whereas with my students who are training to be teachers, they would rather FaceTime. So they would rather come and meet me in my office. So depending on the needs of our students, we can have different modes of contact to meet their needs. And given we're creating these digital environments, that the contact doesn't have to be face-to-face, and it can still be productive and worthwhile and useful. So they're just some of the points from the Manifesto for Online Teaching that speak to me as an educator that I've found useful for rethinking my practice in ways that help me meet my students' needs and meet their needs of different cohorts and enable me to consider that my students have diverse needs and help me to build communities by creating environments that are aesthetically pleasing, that are welcoming, that allow for synchronous sessions and asynchronous sessions. And so it's this thinking about online learning, not just as particular pieces of technology, but thinking about learning as the transfer of information mediated by relationships, this pedagogical aspect of teaching that allows us to use the technologies at our disposal in ways that can better meet our students' need. And so Castaneda and Selwyn, in their critique of the use of technologies in higher education, remind us that paying close attention to pedagogy allows us to understand that education is the educational use of technology is not a chaotic process with dynamics that are governed by chance. Instead, any education use of technology is a complex process that's shaped, conditioned, and modified by a range of pedagogic actors and influences. So some of the the reasons behind our use of technology, our university and the policies that we have to abide by, the government policies about preparing our students for the world of work that they will find themselves in upon graduation. And there is also us as educators trying to meet the needs of our students. And there's our students themselves that help us shape our practice with their needs. So they will often tell us what they like and what they don't like, and that will shape our practice. And we can learn from our students how to best use the technologies that we have. So Castaneda and Selwyn argue that more attention needs to be paid to the interplay between the use of digital technology and people's emotions, feelings, and affect, and that this is essential if we are to fully engage with issues such as identity, responsibility, accountability, as well as the idea of digital technologies use as a collective endeavour grounded in social relations. So technology use is never neutral. And when we think about using our technologies, we need to consider what skills and knowledge our students have, how we can give them the skills and knowledge to make the best use of the technology. How can we help them succeed using assessment methods that they've never used before? What information do we need to provide them that would help them develop the skills that we're requiring? And so all of this is surrounded by our relationships with our students, our relationships with technologies, our relationships with the institute in which we find ourselves. So I will leave it there and take questions, because this presentation has been rather abstract, and I suspect that you may have some you may want to ask me about specific ways of using specific technologies, and I'd be very happy to answer the questions. My reference list provides links to some of the work that I've shared in this provocation. And I'd just also like to thank you for having me and the conference organisers for such a seamless use of technology to make this virtual conference work today. So I'm just looking to see whether there's any questions.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. So we are now open to question and answer session. Do you have any question from the floor for Dr. Rachel? Okay, Doctor, we have one question here. Maybe you can share the experience about future-proof curriculum in Australia.
I can try. At the moment, in curriculum in Australia is sort of less been about future-proof and more about trying to grapple with the present and what the potential of the technologies that we have access to, and the idea of future proofing is only just starting to kind of get traction. So this idea that in the future there'll be less menial jobs and anything that's repetitious we can be replaced by robots. We're also trying to grapple with the implications of the further use of AI and what type of jobs won't be necessary as AI gets increasingly sophisticated. And so the notion of future-proof curriculum then is becoming less about technology and more about the skills that we know can't be replaced by artificial intelligence and can't be replaced by robots. So higher order thinking, critical thinking, collaboration, entrepreneurship, Those are the type of skills that we're now seeing that are being embedded more and more across universally across education courses, both in higher ed and in schools, rather than just being located in something like schools of business. Those ideas are kind of emerging from business schools, this idea of entrepreneurship, for example, and being embedded elsewhere. Likewise, this idea of critical thinking is no longer just something that philosophers would do. It's also being embedded across curriculums right across higher education, so that we're trying to equip our students to cope with whatever the future might bring, and the shift in employment patterns that we're anticipating based on how sophisticated technologies are becoming. I imagine you'll be seeing similar trends in Malaysian education systems as well.
Hi, Dr. Ratio. Hi, Dr. Ratio.
Hello.
Hello. What is it, morning, afternoon in Australia?
Behavior
Afternoon,
in ODL
yeah.
that you could
Afternoon,
share,
all
Dr.
right.
Rachel.
So, good afternoon. Just wonder how higher institution in Australia is coping with this assessment procedure, especially when coming to final exam during this pandemic. Do you make any changes of how you assess the student, or you have some frameworks or procedure or policy guidelines, the best way to conduct either final exam or summative assessment in accordance to the pandemic? Thank you.
We're fortunate here in the University of Newcastle in that our teaching and learning team that lead our policy here have for a number of years discouraged exams. So they have said that exams are kind of an old paradigm, and that because in this day and age anybody can use Google and find answers to questions, that those aren't necessarily the memory skills that exam success relies on are less important now than some of these other skills like creative thinking. And so they have been encouraging us for a number of years to steer away from using exams as the final summative assessment. Now, obviously not everybody's done that, and certain schools here at the university rely on exams. So psychology, for example, still culminates in a 3-hour multiple choice exam. And with the pandemic, we've been told that we really should absolutely avoid exams unless there's no other alternative. And what we've shifted to is scenario-based exams that can be done in the student's own time, that require them to think about what they've learnt across the whole course and how they would apply it to situations such as the type that they're quite likely to find themselves in once they enter the workforce. So less about relying on recalling content and more about applying that content and applying what they've learnt to particular scenarios. We've had problems in Australia with universities getting particular software to kind of spy on the students to ensure that they don't cheat while they're doing online exams. And there's been some fights at some universities between the students and the university about the use of these kind of surveillance software that's aimed at stopping students from cheating and from Googling the answers. But in my institution, we've shifted from formal exams to these take-home exams that can be done over a week or over 24 hours, that are not about easy answers that you can look up, but more about you thinking deeply about what you've learned. They do take longer to mark because you're marking, you can't just tick, you've got to read and think about the students. So they're looking for higher order thinking rather than the kind of lower order recall kind of scenario.
Right. Thank you. Does what you have done, is it facing any problem with this professional body, for example, engineering program, they are facing with this Sydney Accord or Washington Accord, where they have certain standard, certain manual that you have to follow. For example, you must have a theoretical exam and some sort of that. So do you dealing with all these professional bodies in doing all the changes from final exam to alternative assessment?
We are still bound by the professional bodies, but what we've found here in Australia is a lot of the professional bodies have been quite flexible because this year, so a lot of them have changed their rules just for 2020 and allowed a relaxation of what would normally be the demands. So for example, in education, although this is a slightly different form of assessment to what you're talking about, a lot of the schools were shut. So we couldn't put our students in, send them in schools. And even where some schools stayed open, no school was letting prac students or internship students go to the schools during the COVID crisis. And our accrediting body said that we could do alternative ways of allowing students to have placement, which for us, placement is often the final assessment of future teachers. And so students were able to do things like help out at homework centres or create study materials to help schools with their students' online learning, which is not quite the same as engineering, where they want that exam. But we found here a certain amount of flexibility that doesn't normally exist with our professional accrediting bodies. And we're kind of hoping that that flexibility and that open relationship to negotiate with the universities will continue in the future.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Rachel. See you then.
See you. Thank you.
All right, Doctor, we have one question from Dr. Faiza. Is there any research done on teacher behavior in ODL that you could share, Dr. Rachel?
Could I just have you reiterate what ODL stands for?
ODL is Open Distance Learning, Doctor.
Okay, yes. I'm not an expert in open distance learning because in Australia, most of our accrediting bodies want our students who are teachers to not do distance education. So we don't have the same history of open distance education in our teacher education programs because we're encouraged to make those programs run face-to-face. So I'm sorry that I don't have any research to share because it's not as popular here in Australia for teacher education.
All right, Doctor, we have another question from Prof. Fong. Establishing a community of practitioners or COL is pretty fast and easy, but the challenge is on sustaining the activities within the community. Like, how would you encourage members to share their innovative practice in the hope of inspiring others? Thank you, Doctor.
I think the trick is to make communication as easy as possible so that it's not time consuming for those in the community. So there's a variety of different channels here in Australia that communities of practice use. There's communities of practice that exist on Twitter, and they might just, have tweet out a thing that they've done, and then other teachers will comment on it, or they'll share research articles on Twitter about the types of educational practices that they're engaged in, and that might start a conversation. So that's just one way that communities of practice here are maintained that is simple. Other teachers and educators use Facebook groups because so many people spend so much time on Facebook that they'll create a closed Facebook group. So when you're checking in on your Facebook, then you can check in on your professional community. There's also the Teach Meet movement, which has become part of the Australian scene where teachers meet maybe once a term, and the organizer of a Teach Meet will engage a keynote speaker who will speak for half an hour, and then ask for sort of 6 to 10 teachers to share their practice in a very fast way. So a 10-minute presentation on something they've found that works. And it can be very simple ideas through to more complex things. And so, and then they'll have a light supper, share a tea and a coffee and something to eat, and the teachers can mingle. And the Teach Meet movement, it's free to join, and then you register at a website, and it's very easy to advertise the Teach Meets. And so that's been very successful as a way for teachers in Australia to share their practice, because it's a very welcoming environment. It's low stakes. No one's assessing you. You're involved with like-minded communities. So the trick with maintaining communities of practice is to try to create ways in which community members can share with one another that meets the time needs of the people that are the members, so that you're meeting often enough that you are comfortable, but it's not arduous or demanding on people's time, and the channels of communication are quite easy to use.
All right, Doctor, one last question from Dr. Faiza. You mentioned about tea behavior. Could you share some effective tea behavior as we conduct our class online now that COVID-19 seems to push us to continue teaching online?
I'm assuming tea behavior is teacher behavior. Some of the effective things that we've found here is thinking about our students and not assuming that they're all going to be available at the same time. And so designing our curriculum that meets the needs of both the groups of students that want to meet as though they're going to uni. So we schedule a tutorial at, say, 1 to 3 o'clock, and they can meet online on Zoom as a class, but also scheduling alternate activities for the students that have found with COVID, they're at home, they've got their kids at home, they may have lost their jobs, they're finding it very stressful, and they can't meet at particular times. So scheduling alternative activities that can be done at any time and that are substituted differently. So that this kind of blend of synchronous activities and asynchronous activities, students can find the online classes more intimidating than face-to-face classes. So using breakout rooms to allow the students to share the ideas that they're discussing in class and have a smaller conversation with a smaller group, but giving them very clear instructions. So go to the breakout room, discuss this thing. We're going to come back to the big group in 10 minutes. You need to nominate a spokesperson. And when you come back, that spokesperson will share what the group has done. So it requires a bit more organisation to meet the needs of the students who want to show up, want to see everybody's faces, and also to meet the needs of the students who aren't able to, because of time pressure and their home lives, who aren't able to join at particular times, so that they have other readings and other things that they might be able to do to demonstrate their learning.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rachel, for the fruitful sharing just now. We really appreciate that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will have a 10-minute break, and we will reconvene here to begin our professional talent development workshop with Professor Dr. Saleh Abdul Rashid at 11:10 a.m. See you soon.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Abdul Karim Alias from Universiti Science Malaysia. I would like to say thank you to UUM, to UTLC especially for inviting me as one of the keynote speakers on this ISS Inspirational Scholar Symposium 2017. And just now I talk about the topic on engaging on the learner experience, providing the learner experience and how do we engage them in the classroom. We are dealing now with a millennial generation, and they have a very short concentration span, so that is actually one of the challenges. So how do we capture their attention in the classroom to get them engaged in the learning process? So I actually share 5 so-called ideas, if we don't want to call it big ideas, what we call this, if we can design the learning environment and the learning experience just like the Pokemon Go, where students are really, people are really engrossed when they play Pokemon Go game. So how do we learn from this and apply the concept into designing learning in the classroom that would engage students? The second idea, I talk about crowdsourcing. If we read about crowdsourcing in the internet, it's about actually in the context of business. But how do we now use and apply the concept of crowdsourcing in the context of education, using the same principles but in a different context? The third idea, I talk about learning on demand, which basically using the technology and using the connectivity that we have. Then the fourth is about micro learning, which basically to address the attention of the short concentration span of the millennial generation, where now we can design and deliver learning in the short chunk. We call it bite size. For example, we can create a short video of 1 minute or 2 minutes to explain certain concept, and the students can focus because they like it, because the concentration span is very short. So basically that's the gist and the essence of my sharing today, and I hope it will benefit the audience and they can apply some of this in their own classroom practice, and therefore provide a rich and engaging learning experience for their students.
Okay, my topic today is on communicating scholarly work, because we believe that if you engage in research, especially in classroom research, we should share our findings. That is part of SOTL, or Scholarship of Teaching and Learning approach or philosophy, that when you do something, you do innovation in the classroom, I think it's better you can share, disseminate the knowledge, and eventually publish. So the essence of my presentation today is focusing on the need to disseminate, share, and eventually publish your practice in the classroom. Because this is something where everyone can learn from the intervention, from the innovation that you've done. And at the same time, it improves our skill as facilitators in the classroom. So I believe if everyone involved or behaves like, adopt a philosophy of as a reflective practitioner, I think, then SOTL is the way to go for everyone on campus.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 5th Inspirational Scholar Symposium ISS 2020 Virtual Conference Edition. We will now proceed to the next agenda, workshop on professional talent development with the expert Professor Dr. Saleh Abdul Rashid. Ladies and gentlemen, Prof. Saleh Abdul Rashid is currently the Director at the Center for Sustainable Education Leadership Development LEAD, and a Professor and former Dean at the School of Human Development and Technology at Universiti Malaysia Perlis UNIMAP. He previously served as Head of Department and Lecturer at USM Penang, and as an Associate Professor and Deputy Dean at UMS Kota Kinabalu. Due to his outstanding service as Task Force Committee member and mental coach of the Sabah Sukma squad, he was awarded the Ahli Darjah Kinabalu ADK by His Excellency the TYT of Sabah in 2008. A reflective lecturer involved in teaching courses in education, physical education, health education, sports science, and research methods for more than 25 years, Professor Dr. Saleh is a very active researcher and holds several major research grants in the field of education, sports science, and human development. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Dr. Saleh is also the editor of several local and international journals and a member panel of assessors for Malaysian Qualification Agency (MQA), a curriculum development advisor, and a consultant for competency-based talent management (CBTM) framework and system development for several organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Saleh Abdul Rashid to conduct the workshop session.
Very good morning. Assalamualaikum. Thank you for the nice introduction from the MC. I saw some videos here. So Dr. Muhammad Shabani there. The others are closing down their video. Conducting a workshop, we're supposed to have a look at at the videos. So can everyone switch on the video? Maybe we can have a look at your face for a few minutes or a few seconds. Oh, there I see Dr. Fong. How is it, Dr. Fong? Dr. Asfalila. Someone else. So at least we can see your nice face and all that. So to get involved in the workshop, actually, we miss the aura, the touch that we can be connected, collaborate in a room. But now we are everywhere. So we are everywhere. So I think it's the first time to conduct a workshop through using this virtual means of workshop. I'll try my best and try to share with you today's session. I've been requested by Dr. Shabani to conduct a workshop on talent development. So I've been doing this about a few years now, and I share my knowledge and expertise with a few of the university. So let me share with all of you how to develop a talent management framework, how to do the assessment, and how we can use some data analytics to really develop our talent at the university. Let me share my right. That's my topic. Competency-based talent management workshop. The acronym would be CBTM. So the two keywords is competency-based, and the other word is talent management. How we are going to manage our talents at the university or at any institution or organization or any industrial human resource department. How we can really manage our talent by using competency based. I think every one of us, especially from Malaysia. Can I hear anybody is not from Malaysia? Anybody here is not from Malaysia? Anybody? No, everybody is from Malaysia, is it? Except Dr. Rashid just now. Why everybody so quiet? Dr. Hairul, can I have a hi from you? Dr. Hairul?
Yeah, Prof. Yeah, Prof. Yeah, Prof. Assalamualaikum, Prof.
So actually, it's nice to hear someone speaking through the screen. Through the screen. All right. Okay. I think everyone. Thank you, Dr. Hairul. So everyone is very familiar with this position.
Thank you.
2015, 2005. So when talking about talent excellence, this is the shift 2. Shift 2. That is talent excellence. So much more what we're doing now actually is looking at shift 2. I think a lot of us are talking about this globalized online learning, holistic program, and balanced graduate. Yesterday, Dr. Wan Zuhani talking about transform higher education delivery, especially on teaching and learning, right? Some say maybe about lifelong learning and all that. But today we are focusing on this number 2, that is the talent excellence. Okay. Now, we start off with what is competency. During this workshop, I may need your participation to join in by using your tools that you have available with you. When we say about workshop, usually we can imagine a workshop, for example, mechanic workshop. They have different tools, different apps. I hope you may have more than one devices. Other than you have your laptop, maybe you have your mobile phone, where I will request you to do some search afterwards. And maybe you have another additional okay. This is a typical human resource management process. Okay, human resource management process, where usually it's been created at the registrar office, where we have a recruitment process, we have a selection process. Maybe some of us in the panel of selection for new human resource, either lecturers or non-academics. And when they come in, we provide the training for them, right? We provide the training for them. And after the training, we assess their performance, maybe what we are familiar with LMPT or the 4 tracks, and also motivating them by giving them anugerah perkhidmatan cemerlang or other kind of rewards and recognition. So from this diagram, where do CBTM stand? Right? Where does CBTM stand? From our research, today we will help you to workshop. During the workshop, we try to build up our competency model. So maybe we focus on educators, for example. We can focus on professional and managerial. We can focus on TVET. So today we're going to focus on these educators. So CBTM is right in the middle. So you know, at my institution, I was one of the panel for selection of new recruitment and new lecturers coming in for interview. We have several panels sitting behind, and we are talking about what's supposed to be to ask our new candidates. So by having the model, you should know, you can, as a guide for you to ask or to know what is the competency needed by your institution or the new candidate coming in to join your institution. Even when talking about training development, for example, at the UUM, we have this UTLC. So usually, I think during October or November, we receive an email from unit, what we call it, the training center of the registrar, asking what kind of training that you need. Or we refer as CPD or latihan dalam perkhidmatan. You simply put what kind of training that you need, without knowing whether you need the training or not. CBTM will provide you the competency gap to fulfill the vision of your institution by listing out what is the kind of competency needed for us to go together with our institution in fulfilling our mission and mission. Even when it comes to reward and recognition, usually what we call it as ABC, is it? ABC, anugerah perkhidmatan cemerlang. So a lot of us been given this opportunity to get this ABC, not based on our competency, not based on our skill and capability, but mostly based on our turn to get it. So by giliran, we got our ABC. So if you have this system, then you can reward them based on their capability and skill, because it's been measured, and you can really reward either quarterly or monthly or yearly. So by having the system. So by having a good training from a good CBTM model, you can have this talent pool and also succession training. So I would rather put CBTM right in the middle, where you can use it as a yardstick for recruitment and selection. You can use that as tools to reward. You can, after you've done your training and development, you can have the talent pool and also succession training. All right? By the way, if you have anything, you can just raise your hand and maybe we just can join in and slip in. So what is competency-based training? I think to make it simpler, you just read this one. Definition, defining competency is that it's something you need to be able to do well in a specific job role. So some competency we call as functional competency, personal competency, business competency, and so forth. Right? You can Google it, no problem. So why more organizations are focusing on competency-based training? I list out a few of the benefit why organizations are using it. For example, number one, when we match both individual competency, the job competency model, so we put talent in position where they will flourish, and a few more of this why organizations are focusing on the competency-based training. Right. Let me give you the overall picture. Then we go into details. When we want to develop a CBTM model or framework, I think we need to go into the 4 phases. You can see the phase 1. I think today we only can manage maybe to do just the phase 1, right? And then we go to the phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. I think if you divide into time frame, this one will take 6 months, this one will take 6 months, this one will take 6 months, this one will take 6 months. So to finish the overall CBTM development and implementation process, I would suggest it will take about 2 years. We will have a very complete CBTM framework, development, assessment, training and development, coaching and mentoring, data analytics, CQI and everything. We need about 2 years. 2 years to really put the system in place. All right? Okay, let me go into the first workshop. To come up with a model or framework for your institution, there are certain models and theory that we have to base on, right? I list out a few. There's more than what I list out. We have the PCMM, what we call it as People Capability Maturity Model. We have the OECD, Organization for Economics Development, and they come up with this Learning Compass 2030. Learning Compass 2030. We can also refer to Competency at Work by Spencer. And the latest is about the ASTD, the ATD. The ATD, American Talent Development Association of Talent Development, they come out with a new talent development capability model. So I don't know, we can divide how many participants now in the room. How many participants? 36. 36. Can I just divide 36 into, for example, 4 groups? And divide the 4 groups. So 36 divided by 4 will be 9. So number 1 to number 9 in the list. Can you use your other device or the same device just to search for this PCMM? So the list from number 1 to number 9. Who's the list from number 1 to number 9? The list from number 1 to number 9. Just to go through this PCMM. And from number 10 to number 19, in the list, can you go through afterwards about OECD Talent Competency Framework? And someone from number 20 to 29 to have a look at Competence at Work by Spencer and Spencer. And from number 30 to 36, I think, and or more than that, to have a look at the new talent development capability models. I will wait about, let's say, 5 minutes. Is it okay, 5 minutes, to have a read at any one of these? From 1 and number 9. And please come up with 3 takeaways or 3 main points that you come across in the 5-minute reading. Is it possible? Can I hear someone say yes? Hello? Hello?
Hello, Prof. Instruction tak clear lah, Prof.
Is it? All right.
Yeah.
Is it okay for me to take louder? Take louder? No, actually, I just want, okay, maybe some of you to go through these 4 readings before we come out with how to build up a new framework or new model of talent development. So I list out 4 reading materials where you can really go to your browser and just type the main words. For example, PCNM, you can just type PCNM maturity model. So you can read what is PCNM all about. And after that, during your reading, can you really come up with 3 takeaways from your readings or 3 major points that you come across from the PCNM? So how I wanted to do, because I afraid everyone were looking at PCNM, from the list of participants on the right hand side, the name from number 1 to number 9 will go into PCNM. Number 10 to number 19 will read about talent OECD. Number 20 to 29 will read about competence at work. Just glance through, you just can flip through, or you just can drag through. And the last one, the number 30 and above, you read about the new talent development capability model by ATD. If you tap that the main headings in your browser, you will come into that articles or that images, and you can have a read at all these 4 models. Is it possible? Is it possible? Dr. Huda, are you around? No. Dr. Pramajit Kaur, can I hear from you?
Prof, sorry Prof nak tanya juga, because dalam list ni number kita always number 1. So where I'm not in the list, in your list, my name in your list.
I don't know. You're registered with UM. I think UM has a list. All right. Just to make things easy lah. Can I have someone to read PCMM? Can anyone say yes, PCMM? Or to make things easier, you can choose anyone and just read any one of it. You don't have to read all. So maybe you can choose anyone. Just have a glance through or click through those articles or those models, and then we share any takeaway from you. Is it okay? Can we just give you about 5 minutes? Is it all right? The time now is 11:23. I will be back by 11:28. Is it okay? Is it okay? Is it fair? Everybody are muting, so I cannot hear anything.
Okay, Cikgu. Okay.
All right. Prof Fung, you're going to read which one?
Okay, PCMM.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Fung. Just have a look at this video model. Earphone. Roshabani, which one are you going to read?
You managed to find the article?
We have 2 minutes more. Noshiha, you're reading which one?
Still struggling, Prof. Not really understand the instruction. Because
Oh,
suara Prof bergema lah macam echo. I couldn't really hear.
Was it?
Yeah. Macam echo Prof dekat bilik Prof tu. Okay.
Because I'm using the big screen doing the presentation.
Okay.
Okay, I will talk a bit louder so everyone can listen. I just want any one of you just to select any of the topics or any of the articles presented on the screen. You can have a read at either the PCMM, the OECD, or the Competency at Work, Competent at Work, or the new development by the ASTD. Just have something to click through and just share with us any takeaway from your reading. Okay, it's okay. Actually, before we develop any model of talent development, we need to have some foundation, or we call it some understanding about talent development. So what have been presented to you on the screen is some of the major reference that we use before we start building up our talent development model or talent development framework for our own institution. That's the main idea. Okay. Anyone to share from your reading? Just on your mic, and you can just share with us anything that you come out from your reading. Anybody?
Yeah, Prof.
Yeah, Dr. Fong.
Okay, Prof. Saleh. This PCMM, okay, it's the first time I know of this particular model, and it sounds very interesting because this maturity framework is actually to avoid our organization to avoid downfalls of practices. Sometimes, we introduce certain practices and then actually our employees are not ready. They're not matured enough. So this is actually a very good suggestion to look into. And there are actually 5 levels. I can see the level 1 is called the initial level, inconsistent management. Now, then it goes on to level 2 where it called people management. And then another level, level 3, competency management. Level 4, capability management. And then level 5, rising change management.
When you go to your institution, which level are you in?
In continuously improving practices. Level 4.
Oh, you are level 4. That's very good.
Around there, I don't know. But we are not perfect. We are looking for new ways. So
right.
I guess we are between 3 and 4. Thank you.
We will discuss whether you stay at level 4 or you maybe go to level 5 or you go to level 2 or level 1. Any of the participants do some other reading other than, thank you, Prof, other than PCMM? Anybody read the OECD? Anybody read the new talent development capability model? Anybody? No. You, okay, never mind. Thank you for actually, after after this SSS or after this workshop, maybe you can still have a look at a few of these reading, and maybe we'll get some ideas about it. Now, Dr. Fung is talking about PCMM, People Capability Maturity Model. So, for us to develop talent to reach level 5, where the level 5 we call it as optimizing, where change management can really happen, we need to start from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 and up to the level 4. So by default, the diagram shows that level 1 is initial, level 2 is managed, level 3 defined, level 3 is predictable, level 4 is predictable, and level 5 is optimizing. I would rather say a lot of us doing a lot of managing talent, but we don't really measure and align practices so that we have these continuous improving practices, right? I would rather say that my institution will be around level 3.5, something like that, right? Where we really manage, but we don't really optimize it. So we don't have the main contribution of our staff to our institution. And looking at talent development models, maybe someone has read this one, is ASTD, formerly known as ASTD. Now they call it as ATD. ATD is Association for Talent Development in the middle. Now, this ATD divide the 3 competency into 3 major domains. They call it as personal domain, where we're building personal capability. And then we have this professional capability, what we call it as professional or functional capability. And the other one is the impacting organizational capability, where we are measuring, we are focusing on developing others and also contribution to the organization. Right? I give you an example, personal capability competency, for example, your integrity, your ethics, and your professional. The professional, for example, as educators, maybe we have to focus on pedagogical or psychology or andragogy or something like that. Organizational capability, for example, strategic thinking, business skill, and some sort of that. So it's impacting the impact towards the personal, impacts toward the professional, and impacts toward the organizational. Some books are saying about leading others, leading organization, and leading self. So you lead yourself, you lead your work, and you lead the organization. Some are doing the domain as that. The other one, by Bersin and Associate, they come up with a high-impact talent management framework where we are starting from talent infrastructure up to the talent strategy and business alignment. So this one, if you go through all the article, come out. Let me share with you how you build up the competency-based talent framework, right? So from doing all the reading and from looking at all the models, we come up with our own framework. So when building up your framework, you have to start out with your mission and vision of your institution. So we have our own mission and vision. I think every organization, institution have your own vision and mission. You have to look at your strategic planning. Strategic planning, we have strategic planning for 2020 to 2025. You have to look at your faculty and department KPI. You have to look at individual KPI before you really start off building up your model of talent development for your own organization. So our outcome will be, we come up with a competency management system. We are coming out with competency for leadership, where we are developing others and organization. We have this competency-based talent management for academia or academics. We have this UNIMAP CBTM for the managerial and professional, meaning all the registrar office. And we also have for the staff operative And when come up with this framework, we have to have our strategic mapping, performance appraisal, learning development, how do we develop training that going to fit our competency, and also we have to measure and have this competency gap, and also related to our training. We will come up to this in the middle of this presentation. Okay. Let me have some participation from you all. By looking at that, for example, this ATD is suggesting a 3 domain. That is personal domain, professional domain, and organizational domain. So, do you have any ideas how your domain will be when we are talking about education sector or education department? I will start with personal competency. Here, the first domain is about personal. Personal means your self capability, your self competency, right? The second domain will be your professional domain. Meaning how you're going to functional on your work, if you agree with that, right? Sorry, my handwriting not so nice for you to read, right? I would rather go for the third domain, will be developing others. Developing others, for example, community, social catalysts, and other form. And the third one will be organizational competency, or we call it as leadership competency. Anybody going to give some other ideas, or you have other domains? You can see the list. Dr. Hairul, any ideas? If you're going to build up your domains, do you have any ideas? I come up with 4 domains: personal domain, professional or functional domain, leadership domain, and developing others or developing others domain. Do you have any other domains that you want to come up with a competency?
Prof, so far okay, Prof. Saya agree dengan Prof punya model lah. So far 4 domain lah.
Okay, no man. I just have to bring you along. Usually when we in the workshop, it's easier to discuss and easier to have breakout room or breakout group to discuss this one. But by having it virtually online, it's quite difficult to conduct a workshop actually. I don't know. I'm feeling some awkward when come up with this kind of workshop online. It's okay. All right, let me agree with that. Okay. Now the next step is for us. Okay, we have this personal. We have this what we call it as professional and functional. We have this leadership and organization, and we have also some developing others. Somebody may add in to have some core competency. Core competency at the bottom. Now remember, our foundation is our education blueprint, our strategic planning, and also maybe our KPI. We are going toward our vision and mission, right? Mission and mission. So, what I want you to really participate in this discussion is, to come up with at least maybe 2 from each domain, to suggest what kind of competency from each domain. For example, for core competency, I will suggest refer to Dr. Wan Zuhainis and also a few of our speakers is about digital proficiency. The digital proficiency can be the core competency for every institution. Core competency will be shared by all the staff. No wonder you academics or non-academic or whatever you are in the institution, you will get to share this kind of competency. So the core competency, our recommended one as digital or ICT proficiency. I may suggest another one during this pandemic about creativity and innovators. As another competency that can be as a core competency for any institution. But one I want you to focus now is try to suggest to me 2 competency for each domain. The domain is personal competency, functional and professional competency, leadership or organizational competency, and developing others competency. For example, I give you an example, developing others should be called as social catalysts, for example. So you are really doing a lot of these NGO and CSR, social catalysts. So even if you cannot speak, or maybe you have some problem in your mind, you can just type in the chat room, drop a chat room, drop a point there, we will list out later. Anybody want to suggest, or you just want to write or to drop your notes at the Dropbox?
Prof, kalau example for entrepreneurial skill ni, kompetensi ni, how actually kita nak relate dengan Prof punya ni, domain ni, Prof?
No, when we are selecting a domain can be referred to your institution by looking at your mission and mission. But when we are saying of a competency, it's competency about our capability of doing a particular
doing a particular job, meaning that to be a competence, a personal competence, for example, communication. Can you really hear me? No.
Okay, Prof, boleh.
Dr. Harold, can you listen?
Okay, Prof, very clear. Okay, very clear.
For example, personal competency. We as educators or as a staff of any organization, communication is one of the personal competency should be focused on, for example. So personal competency, communication can be goes under personal competency, because whatever your mission, you need to really communicate among us, among our colleagues and our peer and all that. So competency of communication, maybe one be selected for your personal competency. No, competency is really lead down to your own institution. Depends on your vision and mission is what you're trying to achieve. Will be the thing being selected for you to develop the talent so that they can to fulfill your vision and mission of your organization, for example. So personal competency will be one of the competencies selected under the personal competency, right? Okay, I can read a few messages down there. Core competency. Somebody mentioned about digital competency. Now, during my few workshops with other institutions, they seem to choose digital literacy. I think by having this, during this Gen Z and all that, I don't see digital literacy is a good competency for our institution. It should go higher than that. For example, cyber physical proficiency. If we are going to in line with education 4.0 or industrial 4.0, or maybe we have to focus on ICT communication proficiency or applied or something like that. So that's my suggestion. So analytical thinking suggested by Dr. Nosiha. You think so? Analytical thinking, is it a personal competency, a functional competency? Leadership competency or developing others. Analytical thinking, it can be a functional competency. For example, when you do your assessment, or you do your teaching, and then when you do some assessment, you need to give the the result analytically to your peers or your student or to management. So analytical thinking can be a functional competency. It also can be a personal competency. Okay. Creativity, innovation. Okay. Anything else? Personal value, integrity. Dr. Fong, I will agree. Personal competency should be under the core competency, because in nowadays a lot of cases, this Macau scam and all thing, the SPRM and everything. I think integrity, ethics, and professionalism can be a core competency for everybody at the institution. Say we have a few now. We have integrity, we have analytical thinking, we have digital, creativity, the innovators, and anything else coming in from the others? Negotiation. Negotiation is more on the psychology part. So now, when we are giving this competency, we need to think about the bulk of the competency should come from our professional and functional, because we are going to do the job, for example, right? Dr. Fong is now coming to healthy body now. Negotiating is more on as a problem solver, okay, problem solver, or we call it some sort to do something that negotiation is something to do also with EQ and something like that. So when we are going to do the workshop, the best thing is we're going to list out anything that coming up from our participant, and then we have to narrow down to not more than 15. All together, from core competency, professional competency, functional competency, leadership, and also developing others, we should not go more than 15. Less than 15 competency. Why? Why? Because we have to do all the assessment and all that. So 15 competency is quite a lot to us. So we need to really be selective in looking at our baseline and also our vision and mission to choose the best competency to develop among our talent. Okay. Thank you for the participation. Our ethical behavior is also considered as core competency, right? Maybe we have to fill in this one, but during the workshop we can fill in. I give you example of UNIMAP competency for the academics. You can see that the core competency we have choose about 3 or 4. We call it digital, integrity, and also about creativity and innovation. So this is some of the suggested competencies suggested by the participant during our workshop. So for functional, they call it technical skill, because what I am told, stakeholder engagement, resourceful scholar, analytical assessor, and pedagogical expertise. For organization, we call skill organizational awareness, team leadership, planning and organization, and department effectiveness, especially to develop the deans and the top management for every faculty. For personnel, communication and teamwork, lifelong learning, participative, and analytical and conceptual thinking, something to do with negotiation. The core is depend, but ethics, integrity, and some sort like that will be in. Just for example, right? Now, when having our models where we already choose all the competency, just to assume that we already select or we already identified the competency that needed for our institution. So it's time for us to really develop a system how we're going to analyze and also dashboard our findings. Okay. So to identify competency, this one is from Cape Town University, South Africa. They categorize it into 4 competency. They call it managerial, core competency, functional competency, and the enablers. Competency for core competency is usually required for all positions. For required for position that manage to lead people is the managerial competency, or we call it as organizational competency or leadership. Competency that relates to a position or a function that is professional, the green color. Usually, as educators, I already mentioned just now on pedagogy, on assessment, on analytical and all that. And competency that that enable or to support position performance. For example, maybe digital, right? Digital competency will be enablers for us to do our works during this pandemic, for example. So you can have also this kind of domain in selecting your competency. This is from Cape Town University, South Africa, right? And we can also select a competency based on what is happening recently. This is an example from 2020 competency. Even Dr. Zohaini is also sharing a few of work skill and competency during her speech yesterday, right? This is some example of competency that can be selected to get into your framework. This one, I think the middle one been shared by Dr. Zohaini yesterday. So this is the top 10 skill according to the World Economic Forum. Complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, people management, and so forth. And top 10 skill for 2025. This is 2020, not 2025. Analytical thinking and innovation, complex problem solving, critical thinking, technology design, technology use, resilient reasoning, and all that. So this is the type of skill that included. They categorize it into 4. They call it problem solving, self-management is self, working with people, and also technology use and development. And this one is a job skill in demand by 2030, right? By 2030. Written communication, 37.5%, critical thinking, problem solving, STEM, verbal communication, and so forth. So in doing this, we have to really align with our vision, mission, and strategy for every institution, where we are heading to before we really select our competency, right? Let me give you a further guidance. This is emerging job Malaysia, the fastest growing job in the country. So we're going to develop our students, our talents. Where do we select our competency? It's been done last year. It's interesting to look at the graph on the right-hand side, where data scientists come top, and content writer. This is the top 5 of competency. And looking at the data scientists, you can see that the previous role and the top skill that needed when coming to data scientists. So in developing our talent, the way in line with emerging jobs needed in our country. Content writer, for example, now we are going toward the social media and also forth. You can find this article to understand. Even last year, they are mentioning about digital. So digital, I think everybody agreed now. And interesting for me to get this message from my friend. They're asking for a person that can really fit in with this competency. They don't measure whether you have a degree. They don't mention whether you need a master's or what else. They're just mentioning what is required, where we call it as your capability to hire you into that organization, right? They need experience. They need, you need to do all these things. So this is talking about competency. Actually, they're looking for a design instructor. I mean, design learner, design instructor. They're looking for teachers actually, but they don't call it as teachers. They call it a designer, learning designer. Actually, the job is learning architect. They call it. So techno-functional learning architect. So the kind of competency is needed is split out this one. So there is a new job. As been mentioned yesterday by Dr. Wan, 65% of our standard 1 student today in school will landed a job that does not exist today. So you can imagine the kind of job they're going to do in the next 15 years, right? So there is this is another competency model that we have been developed at our university. We call it CBTM for academia. CBTM for academia, meaning that this is the competency selected for our staff to be used as a yardstick for recruitment and selection. Also can be used, for example, for learning and development. So this is the kind of training that we have to come up with to fulfill the needed competency identified by our all staff during our few workshops that we have done. For example, we call it as a resourceful scholar. You need to be an analytical assessor. You need to be good in cyber pedagogical expertise. You need to be a recognized researcher. You know, this will be the core ethics and global mindset, because we are trying to compete in the world by this QS ranking and all that. So that's how we choose our competency, and we have to map it with our training. All right. And by having all this competency, we need to develop the OD, the operational definition, and also the level of competency. Meaning that after identifying all the competency, you need to build up your rubrics and OD. I give you an example, right? You can have 5 levels of competency. You can have 4 levels or 3 levels, doesn't matter. This is 5, this is 3, and this is 4. So for every competency identified, you need to have the domain, it's on technical, you need to have the OD, and then you need to build up the rubrics. So in our case, we rubric into 4 levels of proficiency. We call it as novice, qualified, proficient, and expert. And when we provide the training, we try to get into green and blue. And when we do our assessment, we can really plot our staff, whether they are qualified, they are proficient, or they are expert level. So this is a few examples how we build up from identifying the competency and building out the OD and also the rubric. Okay, as a few examples, creativity and innovation. What you mean by creativity is the OD, and this is the how we to measure our competency among our staff, right? By the way, you have any question? And after that, we need to be so we already built up a system how to measure our competency, right? And from our competency, we can really plot our staff into this 9-box metric. Okay, 9-box metric, where you can see where is your staff at the moment. As a training and learning provider, I would like our staff to be in the 1B and the 2A, the green one. If you have any staff coming into the 1A, get ready, whether they're going to leave you or you need to give promotion or reward to them. And you need to check someone out from the organization if they fall into 3C, meaning that they're very low in performance and low in potential, then you bagi dia surat tunjuk sebab, right? So to make it simpler, from the 360, when we do our mapping, we try to do our mapping. So this is our system, where we have to map our competency with the what we call it, the grade or the post that you're holding. So for example, for organizational competency, we are focusing towards more on the leadership. For the functional competency, so it should be available for everybody, right? For personal competency, who is available? So we have to do this mapping, and also we have to map every competency with the kind of training that we have to provide to them. So this is an example of competency. This is the example of competency. This is the example of a training provided by our unit to really develop the competency to our staff. So we have to map with the grade, with the jawatan, and also with the training that should fit in with the competency. That's how we do it at our institution. So this is our system, the dashboarding. So from our assessment, we are enlarging our 9-block metric into 16 block metric. So you can see that if anyone, we plot our staff, for example, in 2B, we have 49 staff coming into that block. Good performance and good potential. So this one we have one good performance and moderate potential. This one we do it for leadership. When we are going to appoint the dean and also the Timbalan Dekan for our new structure of management. And you can also...
Prof. Saleh, can I interrupt, Prof. Saleh?
Yes.
Can you explain in detail about the performance and potential, you know? So maybe can give the definition what is meant by performance in this graph. After that, the x-axis is a potential, you know, y and x. So what is the difference? After that, how we evaluate these two parts? Okay, thank you, Prof.
All right. Actually, 9-block metric, when we do our assessment, this is a sample of assessment that we run through to our staff from the competency identified. So we can to plot them into either novice, qualified, proficient, and expert. We need a system for this. We need a system for it. By hook or by crook, we need a system. Without a system, we just cannot manage our staff. From that, we can plot into this 9-block metric where we can really measure their potential and performance. How do we measure? We measure by peer review. 360 meaning peer review. If you can use by self-assessment, you can have your manager assessment, meaning your dean or your pengurusi rancangan or your coordinator, course coordinator. And you can also have some peer assessment among your colleagues, among who knows you. And even we can use your student to measure your competency. So we call it 360, where you have self-assessment, manager assessment, and also peer assessment, right? From this, we can plot into either your performance or your potential. How do we do it? This is our system. For example, from you will receive an email. You will receive an email, and then you will know that person, and then you need to scroll out the potential and the performance. Sorry for the blur of the screen because it's just a snapshot from the system. So when we give you the marks, we can average out the marks. We average out the marks, will come up to this performance bar, and we can really plot you into this table. When this table, you see one is performance, the other one is potential. Where did it come from? It's come from this. From when you really evaluate or really assess your colleague or your subordinate or something like that. So what you mean by potential and performance, asking by Prof. Shabani. Performance is your current competency. Your current competency, this one. Your current competency. Potential is you predict your staff going to contribute to your organization in the future. So that's why they call it performance is about, for example, technical skill, ability, and subject matter knowledge, job-related field, ability to develop and maintain working relationship with incorporate additional value. The potential is the ability or capacity for growth. This is for growth, right? Forget about this leadership. So when you do the assessment, you average out the score between potential and performance, you can plot them into this 9-block metric, right? So you can see that. So for example, we do a assessment and we have one lecturers come into this 1C. One lecturers go into the 1C, poor performance, high potential. So you can follow through with a complementary oral with the particular staff, meaning that we doing this BEI, behavioral event interview. So we asking her or him or that particular staff why that he or she been plotted into poor performance and high potential. You know what is happening at UNIMAP? She just came back with a PhD, very energetic, eager to teach, you know, but because without the degree of engineering at the bachelor level, she is not being appointed to be teaching at engineering school. So she been sent to this IT school. So been teaching something the IT subject, end user, but her PhD is on software and hardware development. So what we can consider as she is a very high potential staff, but giving the wrong placement and giving the wrong courses to teach. So that's why she got a very poor performance, but very high in potential. So that's how we read this table. Right? For any staff that coming in into 1B and 2A, this is what we call it very good to the institution where we can develop them further for them to go into 1A, become extending performance and high potential, where they can be appointed as, or giving reward and recognition.
So Prof, is it possible for the performance one, we have a lot of input. Of course, one is we use a 360. So is it possible to get the LPNT or the penilaian prestasi, the mark for penilaian prestasi, to assume this one as the one of the component or the performance of the staff? What do you think, Prof?
I think it's a good suggestion that to replace LNPT. The only thing is, it's actually the same thing, because CBTM really focus on enhancement, appraisal, rather than performance per se. When we say performance per se, like for example NPT, a lot of us are putting all the materials at the end of the year. But when you're doing the CBTM, we need to measure every 3 months, every 4 months. Then we can really see the potential and performance, the performance and the potential growth. The LNPT is what we call it year-end report, is more looking at performance. So I would rather say not to replace, but gradually you can use CBTM or this performance metric as another option, or maybe gradually will replace LNPT. Here at UNIMED, we are using this CBTM framework as what we call it as a guide for any staff to choose the 4 track. So by having this competency measure, by looking at the competency gap, we can really suggest to the lecturer to go into either of the 4 tracks, for example. So LNPT is actually from JPA, from the top management. This is another ways of managing performance and potential. I think it depends on the institution whether you're going to replace the LNPT with the CBTM assessment and process. Okay. Right. Any others? So this is how our system works. So the system, we can have the super admin. Super admin is held by the VC, the vice chancellor, and also the registrar. You can also have the department report. This one can be seen by the dean, and you can also have your individual report. The individual report is your personal view. You can see which performance, which competency need to be developed further. So by looking at the framework earlier, we can see that, looking at the framework earlier, we can really provide the training. Now we come back to our framework. Where is UNIMED framework? This one. So from identifying the competency gap, from identifying the competency gap here, so we can really come up with align the gap with the kind of training needed. So meaning that if you have least competency gap, you need to do more experiential learning or on-job training. Where you really have a big gap, then you need to start with formal learning about 70%, then do on-job training about 20 and 10%. So the framework will decide what you're going to do later when you have already run the assessment process. Okay? Any question for the others? Any question for the others? No. So you can conclude that when having your framework, you can do all this. You can see that you can use your framework to have the recruitment as the yardstick tool, and then you can develop your training and courses that align with the competency needed. You can do your performance management and also your reward and compensation. That is the LNPT and also the Anugerah Perkhidmatan Sebelang. You can really develop your local capability review, then you have your succession planning and your talent pool here. and you can really develop every staff. So actually, it's a full cycle. When you have the framework, you can really develop your talent, and you can use it as a guide to do any of these other process of talent development and also human resource management, right? So the 6 steps of talent management: the talent acquisition, onboarding and engagement, the development, the performance management, the succession planning, and the workforce planning. So this covers the whole part of the earlier framework that I showed you about human resource management. So that will put the end to my presentation by having the last. So if you have a proper system, a proper CBTM, a proper training and development, a proper system, so you'll be able to hire people who have high potential to succeed, because you know what you need from the competency being selected. So you know what kind of stuff that you want to come in into, to join in you into the organization, because you already list out the competency that needed for you to align with your vision and mission of your institution. So you also can ensure that they will receive the training and development that necessary, because when you have the competency, you need to develop the courses, the course that map towards the competency. So you can develop your training and development program to realize that potential and provide an appraisal. Appraisal is the progress, the performance, and also the potential that give them the feedback and coaching, the need to perform well through a well-seeing of a personal and the potential skill. They will call about the performance and the potential. So if you want someone to do the job, you need their skill. If you want them to do it extremely well, they will need to be talented. But if you want them to improve on it, be obsessed with it, and continuously work on it, you need someone who's passionate. So I would suggest CBTM is one of the model that we can really use to really develop the talent. So please don't let talent to waste. That will put the end to my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, Prof. So I have
the slide first.
Okay.
Stop share. At least I can see some faces.
Okay, Prof. Last question, Prof. So actually, this morning we're talking about the future-proof curriculum. After that, yesterday we talking about the curriculum, the innovative, and all those things. So during, especially during the COVID, we have a lot of technology, a lot of innovation. Okay. So my question is, based on this condition, or this the new, we call it the new norm, what is the really I talking about the academic, so what is the really competency skill needs by the academic to handle all those things? So I want your opinion, Prof.
All right, that's a very big question to me. Listen from Dr. Wan Zuhaini's the presentation. Even this morning, Dr. Zaidatul, I think, Prof. Zaidatul, is it? Prof. Zaidatul?
Prof. Zaidatul, yeah.
Prof. Zaidatul. I think we really in the middle of this pandemic. What I can see is, looking at this pandemic, it gives us the opportunity for us to really look, opening our eyes to look at this, what I can call it as dysfunctional of education or academic practices need to be looked into to come out with a new what I call it, new measures or new initiative. As been mentioned by Prof. Zaidatul this morning, about 30%, mentioning from Dr. Wan Zuhainis about fluid organic curriculum, about holistic assessment, about content development. So for me, as educators, we are involved into 3 major things. That is the content, the delivery, and also the assessment. So in looking at this, when talking about competency, so we need to really develop the talent who can really do the 3 major works. So when talking about content, the curriculum, so the e-content, meaning that you need to be really proficient, you need to be capability to develop a content for your learners. For example, by embarking into either what we mentioned by cybergogi,
pedagogy, and I don't know, the pedagogy. So this is included in your development of talent is also in the way going to you to deliver. So do we going to deliver? I think lately after we do a few rounds of teaching, we come out to the conclusion the students are having this, what we call it as screen fatigue, where the student really feel very tired, stressful on facing all this kind of online learning. So we need to really have some competency on deliver our knowledge and collaboration with students online. And the third thing is about doing this assessment. So competency and doing assessment, we need to be more analytical, people analytic and all that. We need to embarking into how we can do some holistic assessment, moving away from final exam, as we mentioned by Dr. Rachel this morning, towards more doing alternative assessment. So I think as educators, we need to build our competency on the three major things on how our content development, how we to deliver, and how we to assess our teaching and learning process. Thank you.
So one more thing, Prof. So I can see that this is for the educator, but I think the important thing is more in the administration staff. For example, the AR, the librarians, after that the accountant, engineer, So actually in the university is something like we need to have, something like the competency for this group, to bring out the university in the higher level. So for your opinion, what is the actual competency that need by the university to bring out the university to in the next level? So can you give the opinion this matter?
Looking at the non-academic staff, I think we can categorize them into two. There is the officer and the non-officer. I think the non-officer is quite clear. They are just to support the officer or the registrar department. So for the officer, if you are, they are categorized into, I think you can categorize into 2 or 3 level. That is the grade 41, 44, and then you get the 48, 52, and you get the 54 and the JUSA. So for me, you know your grade and you know your competence, and we have to develop the competence. For example, for the 41 and the 44, there will be more the competency of them is going to support. The word is to support. And then we go to higher level is maybe to suggest. So what kind of competency that will be appropriate to them to support and to suggest. And when you go to 52, 54 or JUSA, you need to be someone to be able to innovate and create. For example, in doing your work, right? In doing your work. You are 41, maybe you don't make any decision making. You go to 54, 55, you need to suggest a solution. And when you go to 54 or 52, you need to make decision. So competency of negotiation, decision making have to be developed from the grade 41 up to the 54. So the kind of competency is even when talking about digital now, about digitalize the university, even the non-academic staff also need to go in line with the competency of digital, taking their minutes of meeting, how to develop website, blogs, and all that, all sort of thing about digital proficiency need to be also been trained and developed among the non-academic staff, so they go together with the academic staff to the mission and the strategic planning of their particular university. So we can have 2 frameworks, one framework for the non-academic, one framework for the academic, where we are sharing all the core competency, but they have their own functional and professional competency. The academic will have their own functional and professional competency, but the core competency should be shared by all the staff, either you are non-academics or you're academics. And the personal competency, I think, is quite familiar among us, just the level of whether you want to go to the expert level or to the qualified level. And for the strategic planning, for example, it should be tuned to the 42, 54, and the JUSA to have more competency on being and qualified and expert level. So it's a long way to go, as I mentioned to you earlier, the phase. You need about 2 years to really have a solid competency-based talent management among your staff in your organization. If I can answer that, thank you.
Prof. Saleh.
Yeah, Fong.
I'm very, very impressed with this CBTM how long have this been implemented, and what is the impact? Are you satisfied? Are things working out as what you wanted?
We only started about a year, so we already have a system to really measure the competency gap. The major things about doing the CBTM is, I really see the alignment of doing this talent development, where we are really doing what we're supposed to do. I start off with a problem statement, as a panel of interview for the new staff coming in, we don't know actually what to ask them. Because we don't know what the institution need. So by having what kind of competency the institution need, for example, at UNIMAP, we are looking at specific skill ability among staff because we are a technical university. So when that will be one of the core competency we're going to ask our staff, our new staff coming in, whether they have this specific skill ability to join in the institution. Okay, that's one. And even at the end of October, we get the email from the registrar, please state what kind of training that you need, right? I think you also come to the same problem. I don't know what kind of training do I needed. The CPD, the CPD, the 7 days training. Do you really know that it should be fulfilled with the competency in doing your work? Meaning that the 7 days should be fulfilled in fulfilling your competency on your functional and your professional job. But we simply put any training that we like, or we go in any training, we got 1 day berkursus. So we got 7 days, we keep quiet. Right? And the other day is giving our recognition, our Anugerah Perkhidmatan Cemerlang. We simply give by turn. So you already got last year, so you have to wait another 3 years and all that. By right, when you are competent in any of the discipline or any of the competency, you should be rewarded. So you may have your APC every year, doesn't matter, or every month, or every 3 months. It's okay, because we really measured your competency, not measured by you or yourself, it's measured by your colleague, measured by the student, measured by the top management or by your dean, that you're really competent in doing your work. That is the functional competency. And another thing is, as a training unit in UNIMAP, we don't actually know what the lecturers need to develop them further. For example, after doing this competency, then we only see that most of the UNIMAP staff need the psychomotor training, doing things hands-on training on that. So we really map the competency with the kind of training that's needed. Give a good example when this pandemic is happened. Every staff, menggelabah what to do, how to teach online and all that. So we think so. We already choose that digital proficiency is one of the major competency for all staff, especially the educators. Meaning we need to develop more and more training to really fulfill the requirement how to teach online, how to do assessment online. So we are really trying to fish the competency according to the OD that all our staff will come up to the qualified and the expert level. So we are doing a lot of things to align what we are doing now, that we are doing so, but not really systematically done. So we are doing it in a better way. It doesn't mean that before we never do it, but we do it just like Caca Merbah, Haru Biru, or just in time training or something like that, just in time interview and all that. So now it's more systematically done, and everything been in the system. So everything is in the data, so everyone can really access the data and can use the data for build up, for example, our portfolio and all that. So we can really use this for the beneficial of our staff, actually, to develop talent that really, they really feel belonging to the institution because they're really being trained what they're supposed to do. I think for me to explain further, I think we need to be in a longer workshop. Prof. Sorry. Thank you.
May I know whether this CBTM or this particular model that you have designed and developed being propagated to other public university or private university? Are there any other people practicing your model?
Yeah, I think we've already been in about 6 or 7 universities. And this CBTM, what we call it, is a rocker rule. Rocker rule means is developed by you, owned by you, and monitoring by you. We can only say how to develop a CBTM, but the competency, the domain is chosen by you, your own institution. So I think I already been completed the CBTM for UMK for the
professional and for the operative staff. I already share my knowledge with UTHN, with UPNM, and a few other universities. But I don't know whether they, because usually, I mean, I share with them before the pandemic, and I mean, after the pandemic, I don't know what is happening because we can't really move to other institution, going to other institution. So, but I already presented this to our DG, Dato' Hasma, Dato' Siti Hamisah. And already been taken off by Dr. Wan Zuhainis, and we are developing this competency for educators. Even at UNIMED, we have another competency for TVET educators, and also we are building in the CBTM, the competency-based talent management for the student. For the student, meaning that when the student coming out from the university, they have two certificates. One certificate is their CBTA, meaning their cumulative score of their pointers. The other one is they have this competency level of achievement among them. For example, we are developing their leadership, their communication, their teamwork, and all that. So even the HEPA, the Hal Ehwal Pelajar unit, also putting the training for the student based on the competency needed by the student to survive outside there in the industry. So we can build the CBTM to tailor-made to our needs, But how to develop the talent, I just share with the others. So they come up with their own model, they come up with their own training that suit their needs. Yeah, Prof. Ong?
Yeah, Prof. Ong, I just want to add, Prof. Ong. So actually in magnetic, we already come up with the team, to come up the model for CBTM for educator. Okay.
Okay,
So
great.
actually, we try to develop the CBTM for educator. What the Prof. Saleh mentioned just now, we have the core competency and also team. I can see that the committee for KPT, so I think head by the Prof. I think this is one grant in ACAD head by the Prof. Faizah. After that, we have the committee, for example, from Prof. Kamal, from UMP, Prof. Kamal also from UKM, Prof. Saleh, UNIMED, myself, UMT, So actually, we try to come up with the model for educator only. So that model we try to present in to the magnetic. Magnetic is the director of teaching and learning. After that, we bring that one to ACAD and we bring the model to KPT to come up with the general model for 20 UA. After that, the 20 UA we choose. Like Prof. Saleh mentioned, they need to modify. Which for example, the technical university they need more in the technical. For example, in our university, we are talking about the management, so we modify the functional inside there. So the work is there, but we are waiting for the final CBTM model for educator. After that, we give to the KPT and KPT we give to all the university. Okay, so maybe Prof. Saleh want to add what we have done now.
Yeah. So, Dr. Fong, so you need to have two major things actually. You need to develop the models or the framework. So the framework, the models, and then you need to develop the system of how to assess the competency. The third one, you need to develop the learning and development, the training that fit in with the competency. And the last one, you need to do the dashboard and the analytic. And you can follow through with coaching and mentoring. Whichever staff who having the good competency can be the mentor or the coach for the lower groups and all that. So that is the follow through of, and you have to link with the human resource, the Hermes of your university, the human resource system. You have to link with the R&D because you need to develop the research talent and all that. So actually CBTM, as I mentioned to you earlier in the diagram, CBTM stand in between with all the other activities for recruitment, for selection, for reward, for succession planning, for talent pool, and all that. So I think it's a big project actually. If any institution embarking into CBTM, actually should be led by either the training unit of any university, or the talent unit, or headed by registrar office. So like in UNIMED, is headed by our training center like UUM. So if you are interested, we don't mind sharing with you, Prof. Wong, to develop the talent development at your institution, UMS in particular. Thank you.
I think Professor Saleh, Dr. Shabani, we recommend that Professor Saleh get off from UNIMAP, go to the Ministry of Higher Education, and you establish a National Accreditation Center for CBTN bagi semua public and private university. Hey, congratulations. Very impressive.
Wow, a good suggestion. I hope so. Well, I'm going to retire soon. Next 20.
No. You are not allowed to retire. Tak dibenarkan. Thank you.
Prof, I have one question.
Yes.
Okay, regarding a talent management, yeah. When we're talking about the young students, I mean the new generation, yeah, with a new the millennium kind of characteristic. When we're talking about talent management, what I can see the difference is that the young generation they tend to function more active at night. Okay, so for example, when we are giving an assignment, for example, they are started to ask the feedback from the lecturer at night. Yeah, they started to function after 10 o'clock. Yeah, and then at that time, me as an instructor, as a lecturer, I found it's very difficult for me to function and give feedback during that time. So that I think mental stress, mental strength is one of the competency that we should consider in the, in the measurement. What do you think?
Before I answer your question, I read one book by Dale Carnegie, about how to make people happy and keep smiling. Is giving what they want. Giving what they want. Giving what they want. Actually, I've done a small research about the student behavior online at the university. And let me share for you, let me share some of the ideas, the finding. Even I think Prof. Fung also come up with some research about this online behavior among the student. At UNIMAP, they are most active between 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. I do agree with you. Okay, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. And they're most active during what days? During Wednesday and Thursday. They're very quiet on Monday, Saturday, and Sunday. Saturday and Sunday. And 50% of them are using mobile phone. 50% of them are using this either PC or tablet or laptop. And surprisingly, about 0.2% without any devices. Zero without any devices. That's some findings about UNIMAP's student behavior in having online. I do agree with you why the students are active at night. Why active at night? Okay. No, I think just assumption. During days maybe they are busy with their online classes or with the other classes or the other activities, right? And also when the traffic, the traffic, we only provide about 1 GB or 2 GBs to the student. So at night they are more active because they are in the dome or where the traffic for this online are a bit not busy compared to during days. That's why they are connecting you during at night. As a lecturers, that is the thing. I think UUM already come out with a system where you are working by your contribution, not to clock in, clock out between 8 to 5. So if that is the way that students are going to learn, meaning that maybe you have to readjust your time of work for yourself. Meaning you need to provide more time for the student at night, and you have your own sweet time during the days, for example. Because the student now, they want to learn anytime, anywhere, how they like. All right? Or you have a system where you can really compile all the connection or the notification from the student by just reading it when you really start work at 8 a.m. tomorrow. So any question, any notification hand in by the student, drop in by the student, is going to be answered by 24 hours. So you can set the ethics or the etika by that. You can contact me at night, send message to me at night, but I will only answer by the next 24 hours, for example. So it's quite difficult to understand. That's why Dr. Prof. Zadatu just now mentioning about, the different kinds of learners now, you need to really embarking into pedagogy, hitagogy, cybergogy, and all that. This is one of the things that is going to happen today. I'm sorry for that. I think we need to really sit down and have some, some seminar or some workshop, how to really overcome if you think that is a problem. For me, it's okay. I can let the student coming in send me any message about it, but I have the right to answer by 24 hours. That is my my guidelines. Sorry for not answering directly to your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for the inspiring workshop and also to all the participants. Ladies and gentlemen, we will adjourn for lunch break and we will come back to the second parallel session of the conference at dedicated room virtually sharp at 2 p.m. So all participants and presenters are advised to be in their respective presentation room at least 5 minutes earlier so that we will be able to start as scheduled. See you soon.
Thank you.